Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the April meeting of the Philadelphia Land Bank Board. We will start with a statement from our attorney about holding virtual meetings.
Good morning, everyone. Today's board meeting is being held by an authorized communications device because of the continued closure of land bank offices to the public due to public health concerns. This meeting is being recorded. Questions and comments may be made using the Q&A or the raised hand button at the bottom of the screen. If you're calling in and not using the Zoom webinar link, you may ask questions or make comments by pressing *9 on your phone or using the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. Please do not use the chat function. If any member of the public has any issues submitting questions, please send an email to my email address, which I will place in the chat. Please note all questions and comments received by email prior to this meeting or through the Q&A function will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Also, prior to today's public session, the board held an executive session at which the meeting agenda was reviewed and the process for taking public comment was also reviewed.
Excuse me. Great. Thank you, Andrea. And then we'll have a roll call.
Yes. Andrew Doolin.
Present.
Andrew Goodman.
Morning, present.
Rick Sauer.
I'm here.
Alex Balloon.
I'm here.
Rebecca Lopez Chris.
I'm here.
Majida Rashid.
Here.
Michael Koontz.
Present.
Maria Gonzalez.
Present.
Michael Johns.
Present.
And let's see, whom have I missed? Rich DeMarco, who is not present. Okay. Thank you. We
All
have
right.
a quorum and can proceed.
Great. Thank you. Next item we have is the Executive Director's Report.
The minutes, please.
Oh, the minutes. I missed the minutes. I got so excited. All right. Hopefully the board has had a chance to review the minutes from the March 14th Land Bank Board meeting. If there's no questions or comments on those minutes, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve the minutes from the March 14th Land Bank Board meeting. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes carry.
I recuse. I wasn't here.
You want to recuse because you weren't here? Note for the record that board member Johns recuses because he was not in attendance at the March meeting. Thank you. All right, now we have the Executive Director's Report.
Good morning, board members and public. For the Executive Director's Report, from last month to this month, there hasn't been a change in the dispositions that have been reported last month, but I will say that in terms of progress on projects that we have already approved, we are seeing very fast development in South Philadelphia and Wharton Street, also in South Philadelphia in the 1st District. We hope to see projects and properties being completed hopefully by May and have residents moving in. So we're really excited about that prospect, and as we're moving closer and farther ahead with getting our closings on the turnkey program. So
Great, thank you. And I also want to note for the record that we are now joined by Rich DeMarco.
Yes.
All right, we're going to move on.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry.
Good morning. That's okay. To section 4, administrative matters, and we're going to start with 4A, which is an amendment, assignment, and assumption.
Yes. So this is coming back from the March board meeting. It is, and I just wanted to note that Maria Gonzalez, our board member, has submitted a conflict disclosure letter that indicating that she will recuse herself from this matter because she is the president of ASE, which is the developer at issue with this resolution. So
Yes. I'm recusing myself.
thank you.
Great, we will see you shortly.
Yes, hopefully very shortly. Okay, so after that board meeting, the staff of the land bank and staff of ASE, Affordable Housing Corporation, met many times to discuss the issues that were at, the land bank was concerned about in the Good Lands Trust lease and documents. This was a request from ASE to transfer 19, 21, 23, 25, and 27 East Somerset Street and 3022 and 3026 North American Street and the homes built on those properties to the Good Lands Trust, which is a nonprofit corporation that is owned by ASE. And they also requested permission for the land trust to then sell only the homes to purchasers, leasing the land to the purchasers, and thereby maintaining permanent affordability. And we indicated that that would require revisions to the land bank's declaration of restrictive covenants governing the resale price, the affordability term, the land bank's first right of refusal, and the conditions under which the declaration of restrictive covenants would terminate. So we negotiated a number of terms. The details are, the minor details are still being worked out, but we found we reached agreement on many of these issues. So the ones where there a change will occur in the land trust documents are: the lease payments are being reduced from $30 to $10 a month. They indicated that that $10 a month payment is a very important touch point, a way for them to connect with the homeowner on a monthly basis to identify any potential financial problems the homeowner may be facing. The property tax will still be paid on land and improvements by the homeowner, but the land bank has reached out to the Department of Revenue and will reach out to the OPA to see what can be done to obtain a reduced assessment for the land, for land that's held in a land trust and for homes with these permanent resale restrictions. The right of first refusal. The land trust will have the right of first refusal, but will give the land bank a power of attorney to exercise the right of first refusal during the 30 years after the land trust's initial sale of the home, if the land trust is unable to exercise that right. So we would be in second position and could could basically purchase back the home if we needed to. The resale price, the land trust agreed to include closing costs paid by the homeowner at their purchase of the home in the calculations of the resale value. So not just the original price of the home, what they paid out of pocket, including the mortgage, but also the closing costs, which can be, many thousands of dollars. So that was agreeable. Capital improvements, they'll retain the GLT, the land trust provision in the resale value. And then with respect to a mortgage foreclosure, again, the land trust will give the land bank a power of attorney. And I'm sorry that I read power of authority, but it's a power of attorney, which is a form of authority, to exercise the purchase option during the first 30 years following the land bank's initial sale of the home. And again, that's if the land trust is unable to exercise the purchase option. Mortgage refinancing by the owner must be approved by the land trust. However, the land trust was willing to raise the total debt that can be refinanced from 80% of loan to value ratio to 97%. And that was because many of the initial mortgage that the homeowner obtains is a 97% loan to value ratio. So they can refinance that to get a lower interest rate, which is really important considering the current interest rates for mortgages. Also, no adjustable rate mortgages will be allowed. Collateralization of land. The land trust and ASE will not be able to place a mortgage on land received from the land bank and held by the land trust. And then finally, with respect to determination of the declaration of restrictive covenant restrictions, in the event that that the land trust or ASE for some reason go out of business, the land bank will have the authority to revert title to the land back to the land bank and to convey the land to the homeowners for nominal consideration. And this was a concern for us because past land trusts in Philadelphia have run into this issue where they went defunct. The homeowner only had title to the land, to the home, not to the land, and was unable to transfer title. No one was able to transfer title to the land to the homeowner because the board was no longer in existence. So that was a really important provision for us, and the land trust agreed to that. So based on that, the staff is requesting the board to approve this change to the project and to authorize changes to the PDA and to the declaration of restrictive covenants.
Great, thank you, Andrea. I mean, I just want to say thank you to the staff from both the land bank and say for jumping on this and working on it. I know it was not an easy lift. I know it took a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of coordination. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you all for getting to this point. With that, Rebecca, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, so if the resolution on the taxes, one potential resolution is that the OPA would split the parcel, right? Like that would be the land would have a parcel and the improvement would be a parcel. So in that case, the homeowner would still be responsible to pay the taxes on the parcel of the land. Okay.
That is correct. The land trust was not willing to assume that payment responsibility. And
Any other? Oh,
which
sorry,
is-
go ahead, Andrea.
Which is why we are really going to work hard to find some, either an exemption or a reduced assessment, a willingness to reduce the assessment.
Or, I mean, is there any way that those taxes paid can be built into the resale value somehow? I don't know. For increase further, or consider the taxes paid on something you cannot sell into the resale formula.
I think that has to be that's the one final thing that has to be
Yeah.
worked. Yeah, and I think there'll probably be different things on the table there. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, just one follow-up question. This was certainly a special case, but I think some of the discussions have been, we need to have a longer-term solution for disposition of properties to community land trust for other home ownership or other purposes in the future. Do we think the changes that you made to the PDA and the other agreements provide a template for future projects now, and that those could be resolved more quickly?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and thanks for bringing that up, Rick. Yes, the big difference here is that this was disposed as a normal disposition, and in the middle of the development phase, an amendment was requested. In the future, if somebody elects to do a land trust, we would have a different set of requests. And also, we would also set certain terms and limits that, hey, we need to talk to you about what's your long-term lease look like, what are the fees, much like how we look at, say somebody wants to do, multifamily development and there's an HOA. What does the HOA agreement look like? What are the requirements to the home buyer in those situations? So we are putting that list together to synthesize that. I think it'll be a lot easier for any other group coming in to do that. And we have been talking extensively with a group in West Philadelphia who is looking to come in as a land trust. And we are having repeated meetings to talk about, these are key issues that we have to resolve. But I think we're pretty close, and this is really helpful in setting up a template moving forward for land trusts.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Andrea, did we receive anything in advance from the public on this item?
We did not, no.
Okay, thank you. I noticed we do have a couple hands up. So again, we are talking about authorizing amendment assignment from ASE to their land trust, and that's the item we're on. So can we unmute Sophia Schmidt? Go ahead, Ms. Schmidt. You should be able to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I think I accidentally hit the raise hand button.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Next, we have Francis Enriquez. Mr. Enriquez or Ms. Enriquez, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be able to hear from Francis Enriquez. Francis, maybe you could put your question in the Q&A. Oh, looks like the hand has gone down. All right. So with that, I will call the question. Again, the staff recommendation is to approve the amendment, assignment, and assumption of the developer obligations under the purchase and development agreement and amendment of the declaration of restrictive covenants.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve this amendment, assignment, and assumption. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That brings us to item 4B. We are going to take item 4B1 and item 4B2 together because they are both interagency transfers.
Thank you and good morning, board. Today we're presenting item 4B as Ann said together. These administrative items are pertaining to an interagency transfer, one of which 4B1 is pertaining to the transfer of city-owned properties, PRA-owned properties, and land bank-owned properties to PHA for their management, reuse, and disposition for future housing development. That one pertains to properties that are in the 5th district. They're located at 3230 to 38 Diamond Street, 3030, 3012, 3013, 3014, 3015, 3108, 3110, 3112, 3200, 3202, 3204, 3206, 3214, 3222, West York Street. Also in the 5th district, 2338, 2340, 2408, 2410, 2412, and 2500 North 31st Street, and also 2401 and 2549 and a half, which is also known as 2551 North 32nd Street. That pertains to item 4B1. Item 4B2 again is also an interagency transfer for properties that are also owned by the city, PRA, and the land bank, ultimately to PHDC for the conveyance of those properties and for the management on their end. Those properties are being moved for future affordable housing development, and also one property pertaining for the preservation of a community garden. Those properties are located in the 5th district and one in the 7th district. Those in the 5th are 2268 Cadwallader Street, 3104, 3106, 3107, 3108, 3110, 3115 Cecil B. Moore Avenue, 3003, 3009, and 3011, and also 3029 and 3100 Clifford Street, 926, 928, 932 West Dakota Street, 902, 903, 907, 909, 925 West Dauphin Street, 2203, 2248 Delhi Street, North Delhi Street, 2232, 2235, 2245, 2248 North Franklin Street, 2253, 2257, 2259, 2261, 2263, and 2332 Germantown Avenue. Also 2312 and 2314 North Marshall Street, 3109 Moore Street, 911, 913, 915 West Susquehanna Avenue, 2224, 2301, 2303, 2305, 2234, 2236, 2238 North 7th Street, 1709 to 11, 1713, 1717, 1719, 1721, 1727, 1729, 1731, 1717 to 31 rear, 1741, 1748, 1749 to 51, 1750, 1752, 1753, 1754 to 56, 1755, 1757, 1759, 1801, 1802 to 10, 1814 to 22, 1819, 1821, 1825, 1827, 1829 to 37, 1841 to 43, all on North 31st Street. And finally, 1934 North Lawrence Street in the 7th District. Again, those last set of properties pertaining to a transfer to PHDC from the land bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Any question on this item from the Land Bank Board? Andrea, have we received any comments from members of the public in advance of the meeting regarding this item?
I have not.
All right. It looks like we have a couple hands up again on this item from members of the public. Let's start with Linda Black. Ms. Black, you should be able to unmute yourself. It looks like we may have Francis Enriquez unmuted. Francis, you can go ahead and give your comment.
Hi, I'm not sure if I'm going to, it's not about that one. It's just, I submitted an application and I just wanted it to see the status. I am not sure if I am in the right chat. I have 2 addresses.
Okay, we're gonna put the information to contact staff in the chat so that you can reach out to them about the applications and find out the status, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And Linda Black, please.
Yes, thank you. I was just able to unmute myself. My apologies.
No problem.
My question is about 2203 and North Delhi Street and 915 West Susquehanna Street. For 915 West Susquehanna Street, in 2021, I submitted a request about a tree that is on 915 West Susquehanna that has been impacting my property, and I've not received any success in having anyone address the tree, remove the tree, or get back to me about the status of my request for the removal of the tree. So I'm curious about that, given that that is a property that was just mentioned on the agenda. I'm also curious about 2203 North Delhi Street and actually also 911 and 913, I think it is, Susquehanna. Are those properties currently under some sort of agreement for development? So those are 2 questions.
Right, so I think all of those have to do with item 5A, and I'm not seeing any of those addresses listed.
They were they were just mentioned 4B. They were just mentioned under 4B.
Right. They're part of the PHDC, the transfer to PHDC.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look through and I didn't see them. Okay, do we have answers to those questions? And I apologize for not seeing them.
So first, can I get that address again where the tree is located?
915 West Susquehanna. I sent an email to you in June 2021.
All right.
And I sent other emails since then.
All right. I will talk to our project management team about that. The transfers of properties to PHDC are for the development of affordable housing. Those affordable houses will be at 80% of AMI or 100% of AMI. They will be developed by in partnership between PHA and PHDC.
So they're currently not, So there is an agreement to, obviously, there is an agreement to develop them. Is there any sense as to when those properties might be developed?
Well, after the transfer is done, then there'll be a request for proposal issued by PHA to identify developers for that development.
And will the public have opportunity to comment?
I believe so. In the PHA process, when they issue RFQs, there is a public comment situation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Black.
Thank you.
Next week, oh, do you have another one?
No.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Next, we have Marcos Lamelli. Go ahead, please. Mr. Lamelli, I believe you're unmuted and you can provide your comment. Mr. Lamelli? Oh, you just muted yourself again. Okay, you're unmuted now. We should be able to hear you. All right, we seem to be having some technical difficulty with Mr. Lamelli. I apologize. Perhaps you could put your question in the Q&A and let's go to A Simple Life.
Hi, I'm calling about 2216 through 2240 North 9th Street. We've been working with PHA, and my neighbor has got a petition that she's communicating with Clark. She got a verbal that he would keep it as a green space. It's almost an acre. It's unique, and in the presence of being surrounded by all this gentrification, we're trying to keep it for the community here. And so I'm here, and I've been planting trees for almost 20 years here, and I don't know what the next step is. So I'm not sure what we're doing in this next process with that or what the status is. And we have been talking to Trust for Public Land for more than a decade and haven't been able to get from the land bank how to get in there with them. We've had funders. We just haven't been able to get clarity on who owns it so it can be purchased.
So that property, just so the board's aware, that is not a property that's under identified for transfer and not a part of this agenda item. I will say that we did receive your email. We were looking into the status of it because currently it is a city-owned property. And we were reaching out to the council office to get clarity as to what the end use would be. We do have your email. Once we get that clarity, we will reach out to you, but currently it's not in the land bank's inventory. And I know there was some, there were conversations about PHA developing it, but that is not on this agenda item, but we can follow up with you as to what will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like Marcus Lamelli was able to put his question in the chat. So I'm going to read them and see if we can answer. So the question is, what are the procedural reasons for the transfer to PHA and PHDC? Why is transfer to these other agencies the smartest way to dispose of these properties for affordable development?
So the purpose of this transfer was to, PHA is trying to develop homeownership opportunities for their population. The easiest situation was, instead of having to do an agreement with the land bank, allowing them to RFP our land while it was titled to us, was to transfer it to PHDC to affect the terms of the agreement that they had set forth. That's why it was chosen to transfer it out to PHDC so they could facilitate a partnership with PHA for affordable housing development.
Okay, thank you. All right, those are the public comments we had. So unless the board has other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Hi, Anne. I just have a question. So I know that we have a long list of properties that are going to be transferred and the proposals for affordable housing and also for land and garden space. And, you know, it doesn't denote which property will be for which. And I just wanted to ask the staff, what would be the process for PHDC to seek public comment from the community after the transfer goes through?
So as I stated before, the property that is being, just to correct me if I'm wrong, it would be the Lawrence Street property?
That's correct. That's the one that's earmarked for community garden preservation. All the rest is for affordable housing.
Right. So the first batch is going to a 4% LIHTC project, where the community has already had extensive communications with the developer and with PHA. There is a CBA in place. This has been presented to the board a couple of years ago and had been tabled numerous times. So at this point, an agreement has been met with the community, and that's why we're moving forward with this transfer. So the community has already been heard and been extensive meetings. With the second batch with PHDC, PHA will be issuing RFQs, and in that process, there is a community engagement piece that's they go through.
Well, no, these would be heard at the PHA board meetings, which are public as well.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, can I get a motion on these interagency transfers?
Motion to approve the interagency transfers.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve the interagency transfers. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries, and that brings us to item 4C. And again, these are all amendments to already approved dispositions, so we're going to take these all as one item as well.
Thanks
Just
again.
Madam Chair, quick note, I'll be recusing myself for this agenda item.
Thank you. Note for the record that board member Goodman is recusing himself.
All right, thanks again, Ann. So item 4C is in regards to amendments to approved dispositions. Item 1 of the 4C is in regard to resolution number 2022-14, which was approved by the board in July of last year. That resolution approved BVG Property Group as the developer of 13 mixed income single family home ownership homes and units in South Philadelphia in the 1st District. Pursuant to that approval, BVG was approved for the scope that included 8 affordable single family units, which will be sold to home buyers at or below 80% of AMI. The rest of the 5 units will be sold for market rate. After the properties were sold to BVG in December 15th of 2022, BVG conducted a geotechnical investigation, which commenced construction. Prior to commencing construction, that resultant report confirmed that there were unfavorable conditions for construction as proposed, and the developers incurred increased development costs associated with soil remediation and reinforced foundation systems. As a result, BVG has requested a $20,000 increase to that particular maximum sales price for that approved disposition. So again, for that particular item, the board is requested to approve an amendment that will raise the maximum sales price of 8 affordable units from $254,999 to $274,999. And the amendment will also approve the increase of an AMI level for those 8 affordable units from 80% to 100% of AMI. So that they still remain eligible for the Turn to Key program. All other terms of that sale will remain the same in regards to economic opportunity, applicability, and the declaration of restrictive covenants for a 15-year period for income verification. Item 4C2 is also a item that was approved for BVG in July of 2022, resolution number 2022-15. Again, they were approved for the development of 19 mixed income home ownership units in Port Richmond, also in the 1st District. Pursuant to that approval, just like the previous one, the scope was approved for 12 affordable homes in the 19 units. And those 12 affordable homes will be sold to 80% of AMI or lower for target household incomes. The remaining 7 will be sold for market rate. Like the other item, the BBG purchased the properties on December 15th of 2022. They conducted a geotech investigation. The resultant report also confirmed unfavorable conditions for the construction as proposed, and they have now requested an increase to offset the increased development costs associated with the soil remediation and reinforced foundation systems on that project as well. This particular item, BVG is requesting a $10,000 increase for the price or sale price of each affordable home. Therefore, the amendment will raise the maximum price for the 8 affordable homes from $254,999 to $264,999. And it will also increase the AMI level of those 12 units from 80% of AMI to 90% of AMI, still allowing it to qualify for 100%, or excuse me, qualify for the turnkey program. All other sales terms remain the same. Still remain as subject to economic opportunity plan, and the declaration of restrictive covenants in 15-year term will still apply. Item 4C3 is for a different group. It's in regards to a resolution that passed for 2022, September 2022, resolution number 2022-30. That resolution approved the developer West Noma Revitalization Group to rehab 7 existing 2- and 3-story homes in West Philadelphia, the 3rd District, into single-family homes that will be sold for $195,000 to households at or below 80% of AMI. Each of those units contain 3 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. This is a particular sale that has not completed yet. Prior to completing that disposition, the developer gained access into these structures, and they are now aware of significant structural issues that need to be addressed in each. The unanticipated higher renovation costs, in addition to the overall increase in laborers and materials and trades, financing costs associated with rising interest rates, they've all led to a budget increase of about $20,000 per property for the applicant. As a result, they've requested an increase to the sales price of each home equal to that amount so that the project remains feasible. So today, that resolution, for that amended resolution for item 4C3, will actually allow for the increase of the maximum sales price of the 80% of AMI homes from $195,000 to $215,000. They'll also extend the minimum affordability compliance unit. The previous approval approved for 10 years of a compliance period. That compliance period will be extended to 15 years per the approval of this particular amendment, so that they to ensure that the units are actually eligible for the turnkey program. All other terms will remain the same. All these applicants remain in compliance with the City of Philadelphia's, they're good standing with the City of Philadelphia. And again, all terms will remain the same for each one of those outside of the ones described here.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. And before we proceed, I need to allow Andrea to explain why Andrew Goodman needed to recuse himself.
Yes, I just wanted to explain to folks that because he works in the 3rd Council District's office, he provided assistance to West Noma Revitalization when they first submitted their application, just in terms of how to complete the application, and he therefore felt that he had a conflict of interest. And because we were taking all 3 of these items on the consent agenda as a consent agenda item, he recused himself from all 3.
Great, thank you. And recognize Rick Sauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand why the request to increase the sales price to cover the additional costs to either remediate the land issue or increase construction cost. I don't quite understand for C1 and C2 why the AMI is being changed. I mean, to qualify for turn the key, you just need to be below 100% of AMI. So I don't know why it has to go up from 80 to 90% of AMI to qualify? Or is it the issue that the unit now selling for $274,999 is no longer affordable to someone at 80% of AMI? And thus we need to increase the bandwidth of who qualifies for those units? Or what's the rationale for increasing the AMI for those two projects?
So if you look, typically when the land bank has posted like RFPs we've issued, the vast majority, like say in the 5th district, would be 100% of AMI with a max sales price at 280. Not that every home buyer will be at 100%, but it's the outer limit, and that's why we were looking at. That's why we had discussed increasing the AMI on those properties. And for the others, because of the increased pricing to 264, we upped the AMI. Again, that does not mean that, you know, the people who would qualify to enter into that property would be 90, but it just gives a wider margin for compliance.
Well, it seems like when the projects initially came before the board, they were approved for sale at 80% of AMI. So, you know, the initial decision was based on that. And now we're increasing the eligibility of the units of who they could be affordable to. I understand that doesn't mean that's who someone at 90% of AMI would buy it versus someone at 100% of AMI versus 80. But that does provide some concern for me that we're, if it's not a matter of the fact that someone at 80% of AMI could not afford a $275,000 house, I still don't quite understand the need to increase the AMI eligibility.
I'm sorry, everybody all of a sudden was bouncing through the screen. Maria, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I just have a question related to, just to get a straight, turn the key program. Let's say if the unit that, hypothetical, the one that was increased from 195 to 215. So if they're eligible for turn the key subsidy, would that reduce further that sales price of 215 to a lower amount?
Correct.
Okay,
Right,
so
up to $75,000 lower.
up to 75,000, right, to make it affordable to a lower income household.
Correct.
Right, right. So I think that, you know, along with the previous question, I think it will make sense if those units that were eligible for turn the key would be targeted to lower income households, because that's what, you know, it's designed for.
So I think there's a clarifying point here, right? Turn the key is a subsidy to the home buyer.
Right.
And so these units are eligible for a home buyer to buy them and get turn the key subsidy, but it's not 100% of a guarantee. Right. So for example, I'm just going to round up. So for the first one, where now the house price has to be 275 in order to cover the cost, it could potentially be bought down to as low as 200,000 and affordable to a lower income. But if a buyer like that can't be identified, or for whatever reason, it still could be sold for the $275,000 price, which, again, if someone at 80% of AMI could qualify for a mortgage and buy that house, they certainly could. But I believe that the reason the AMIs were increased is because 275 is not necessarily affordable to someone at 80%. You know, spending only 30% of their income, et cetera, but would be affordable at someone at 100% of AMI. So I think that's what's happening.
Right.
There's also a concern, like there's another portion to this is the construction financing. So the terms with increased costs in this climate, construction financing also shifts. So if your development costs are going up, that also impacts how the financing on the development. So.
No, and I fully understand that and appreciate that. Trust me, we go through that every day, and I fully can appreciate that. And especially during these times, I was just you know, questioning as to, you know, if maybe there will would be a set aside for lower income households so that there's, more equity, especially in neighborhoods that are, seeing a lot of development, that there's a variety of income levels and greater participation of lower income households in the purchase of those units.
Yeah, and again, I think what happens here is that because we approved developments for turn the key, it's sort of this misnomer, right? Because the development doesn't get turn the key money, right? It's really the home buyer that gets it. And so I think that it's confusing. Michael John.
Yeah, so sort of to Rick's points and to Maria's point too, I guess I'm having a hard time with changing the AMI since it was originally approved at 80%. And I understand the reasoning that it's 90%, but the effect of these units really being affordable is just a real concern, because if you look at the AMI at 80%, not our fault because it's not just Philadelphia, it's like $84,000 for a family of four. And it really starts to, if that number moves up to 90% and that number moves up to 100% of AMI, you talk about affordable housing now being the gentrifying housing in these neighborhoods. So it's tough to agree with that shift from 80% to 90%. That's really,
yeah. I think that's a concern, right? As we see construction costs go up, interest rates, all of that. Because again, we are not necessarily putting subsidy into the development. Right. So it costs what it costs to build these units. We're not putting any subsidy in. And I think, yeah, that's something that we've got to keep our eye on. I agree with I agree with those comments. We don't want to get it to the point where these are beyond market, really truly market rate units as opposed to affordable units. But again, what makes these affordable is if the home buyer is able to access turn the key. And again, I think that's why there's confusion, because it's not, the turn the key money is not provided to the developer, it's provided to the homeowner.
and I don't belabor this, but and I can't remember, probably we spoke about this before, does the developer have an obligation to outreach to the list of individuals on the turn the key?
We do the marketing, just so everybody on the board is clear.
Okay.
The way the contract is, our development contract is that they have to accept our referrals. So we, PHDC and land management, are qualifying the city employees and not non-city employees, and the developer has to work with those home buyers for compliance periods. They're not able to market on their own or solicit their own buyers. They have to accept our referrals of qualified home buyers.
Thanks.
Rick, do you have another question?
Yeah, just a quick comment. So if the assumption here is that the home buyer will be getting the turn the key subsidy, in essence, bringing the sales price possibly down to $200,000 at the most, I would think that people at 80% of AMI, there'd be enough people at 80% of AMI that would still qualify for that versus the need to boost the threshold.
Any other comment from the board? Andrea, did we receive any comments from the public prior to the board meeting?
No, not regarding any of these amendments.
Okay. Looks like we have one hand up from the public. Can we unmute Rachel Pritzker? Oh, and we have another one. Okay, Rachel Pritzker.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to quickly mention that in this situation for BVG, it's just unique because unfortunately, given the liability concerns the city has around allowing people to do geotechnical on their sites before disposition, you kind of don't know some of the conditions that you're meeting. So the intent is not to not meet the AMI or the affordability, that is always the intent. However, you know, as you all know, with development, you kind of get into these situations where we have to account for soil and site conditions that we don't have the ability to discover ahead of time. So this isn't a function of just we want to make more money. We just don't want to be in the red. And so that's where we're at. If there is a way that the board could explore some flexibility around that earlier in the process, I think it would help avoid some of this, but it just so happened that that was the soil and the sites. We have our engineer as well in the event that anybody had specific questions, and did provide sort of detailed reports and information. So it was really clear that this is not just a interest rate issue or a financing, this is a site condition issue. So just wanted to make that clear, and definitely take to heart all the comments on affordability. That was our intention, as was the developers. We just, I know that the intention of this program is not to have people be in the negative and or not be able to do this or provide a great product. So that's where we are, and we appreciate the understanding of that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for those comments. And next we have Jahad Ali.
Hello, good afternoon, members of the board, Madam Chairperson. I just listening to the comments. I didn't really have a problem with the raising the price, the MI, because I thought somewhere along the line, I know when I looked at marketing, we were talking about police officers and teachers. Now, you know, I'm still trying to see how that happens, but you know, in my mind, you know, I try to get over the fact that not all Black people are low income. So, you know, I don't think police officers are considered low income, and I don't think firefighters are considered low income. So, you know, some of that marketing is to them. So, you know, as a former police officer, so I'm sensitive to that, and so I don't see that as a problem. I do think that, you know, listening from everything that I've heard today, I do think that maybe the agency should start to see how you can assist the 4C3 developer more, because they seem to be more in tune to really making affordability for the lower tier incomes. So I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have an issue with, when your staff members said that everything else remained the same, I don't see how the percentages on the MBE could remain the same and we're increasing the monetary amount. And also, as a follow-up to that part, my whole concern has consistently been MBE and reports and documentation for that. So is there anything that we can see as far as the MBE participation during this stage before the project is over?
I mean, I'm a little confused as to the question. I mean, there's
So I think the question is there any way to get some reporting on the status of how the MBE, WBE compliance is going while the project is in process?
Thank you.
Okay. I think that Justin Veazey, the developer, has his hand up and he can best answer that question.
Okay, can we unmute Mr. Veazey, please?
Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Hi. Thank you all for taking the time, members of the board. So just to weigh in on our project a little bit, this went back for me probably 3 years ago in this process. And when I first started, my point was to deliver a great affordable product, having a lot of MBE, WB participation, also at a great price, which was why my prices were at the $254, which is pretty low considering some other projects. That also being said, I had wrote several times with concerns of the geotech, but couldn't gain access. So that's why on my increases, just so the board knows, the Port Richmond properties, that land fortunately wasn't as bad for us. So I only needed to cover a $10,000 per lot change order. The South Philly ones is where we really got hurt. To address Mr. Jahad Ali's comment, right now, up to speed, I'm probably in the sheetrock phase. I have my foundations were minority contractor, my legals WBE, my framing was minority contractor, my electrician's minority. The only subs that I have not had minority participation on or women owned have been HVAC and plumbing. Everything else is completely compliant, and I'm above my minority and women owned. I think I'll end up supposed to be 25 minority, 10% women owned. I think I'll end up at 40 to 50 minority. and probably 30% women-owned. And I have upcoming projects, incoming that have been approved by other council members after seeing the project that I'm delivering and the participation that I'm having go down on my job sites. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veazey. All right, and next we have David.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So I wanted to bring up the community garden that we have on Diamond Street. It's 3 of the properties that were listed, 621, 623, and 625. That's been a community garden since the 1980s. And I took over leadership of the garden after the previous person who'd been in charge of it passed away in 2007. He had planted fruit trees. When he passed away, they came in and cut out all his fruit trees. I replanted about 20 fruit trees there in 2014. And we'd also been growing all kinds of vegetables and grapes and different things. So we've been maintaining that. It's been bearing fruit for 6 or 7 years now. And the posting says that the plan is to knock it down and build low-income housing, which low-income housing is good, but we also need to have green spaces. And this has been a green space in the community for many decades now. So that's my main concern. I've been talking with Anna from the Ferguson School. She runs the agriculture program there. And also they have a carpentry program that wants to help us maintain the wall around the garden. And the agriculture program would be helping us in the garden. And there's also been a lot of community support and concern since neighbors have been walking by and seeing the posting there, talking about taking out the garden. So I wanted to see what the plan is there. I've also talked with the Gardens Trust about making it a permanent garden. So I wanted to see if anyone could respond to that.
Sure. Can you clarify the addresses again that you're speaking about?
Yes, 621, 623, and 625 Diamond Street.
That's on the development, the RFP, the Hartranft RFP, not on the item at hand.
Okay, so what are they? It's 621, say it again.
621, 623, and 625. It's a contiguous piece of land, the 3 properties.
623, 625, okay.
Yes.
All right, so that isn't this agenda item, but it will be coming up. But can we just respond to, have we had an inquiry about that or any conversation about that?
Are you talking about the development item or this item?
The development item, as long as he's already given his comment, 621 through 625 Diamond Street as a garden, has there been any, I'm just asking the question. The answer could be no, but just if there's been any consideration or communication about that.
Andrea, have we received anything along those lines?
Hold on. With respect to public comment, no. No prior public.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, David, we're going to have to get to that when we get to that on the agenda item.
Yes, that's fine. That's in this call.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be item 5A, which is when we talk about development for affordable housing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Sorry. All right. It looks like the next is Dawood Bey. Go ahead, Mr. Bey. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to just jump in on the BVG comments and just kind of give a little update as related to what Justin Veazey was just saying in regards to our MBE participation. Fine Print Construction is one of the contractors that's basically handling the foundations and the framing on these jobs, and the job's been moving very, very well. And I think partnerships like that is really building a lot of morale within the community by a lot of people seeing African-American contractors actually building in their communities. So I just wanted to give a big ups basically to the whole program and let everybody know that what we intended on doing, both from the land bank and from developers perspective and the minority developer program perspective, is actually working. So I just wanted to, you know, continue to encourage to push minority participation and to try to link as many developers and new contractors from the community together as much as possible. So I just wanted to add my little 2 cents on that and just congratulate Justin on a job well done.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I'm going to call the question. Can I get a motion on this item from the board?
I move that we approve the amendments.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve item C 1, 2, and 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Just note my abstention, Madam Chair. I abstain from this vote.
Okay, all right, hold on. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. From what I can gather, it's 6 for, 2 against, and 1 abstention. So the motion passes. All right, that brings us to item, lost my place, 4D, which is a revision to the compliance period for unsolicited, affordable, or mixed income rental projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to the board to adopt the policy of requiring an affordability compliance period of 30 years for affordable rental units in unsolicited applications proposing that are unsubsidized, meaning they don't receive any public financing, proposing a fully affordable or mixed income rental projects or mixed home ownership and rental projects. The background on this is that the Land Bank Board had asked the Land Bank staff to evaluate the feasibility of requiring a 30-year compliance period for affordable rental units in these unsolicited, affordable or mixed income rental or home ownership / rental projects that don't receive public financing. And the Land Bank staff evaluated the cash flow for these projects using rent levels for affordable rental units set by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. We determined that a 30-year affordability compliance period would not affect the financial feasibility of such projects. And this policy would apply to all future unsolicited, unsubsidized, affordable and mixed income rental or mixed homeownership rental projects approved by the Land Bank Board, not to previously approved projects. So the staff recommends the adoption of this policy.
So I just want to clarify, because I'm looking at my board agenda. My board agenda, it just talks about mixed income rental projects. But what you just described means this would apply to home ownership projects as well.
No, this would be, sometimes we've had applications for mixed home ownership and rental projects.
So if we get those, but this would only apply to the rental portion of those types of projects.
Correct.
So we're really talking about only extending the affordability period for rental units, not home ownership units.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Affordable rental units within these projects.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And
All right, any other?
I will rewrite the resolution to make that clear.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board on this item? Andrea, did we receive any comments from the public prior to the board meeting on this item?
We did not.
Okay. And it does look like we have, oh, no. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? We have, well, I'm going to wait 10 seconds because the hand keeps getting raised and then going down and then getting raised. So do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? we have a panelist that wishes to speak on this item. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Just a really quick clarifying question. So this changes, this is the adoption of a policy requiring a 30-year affordability compliance period. There is no affordability compliance period currently.
We have,
15.
go ahead.
Yeah, currently it's 15. This would extend it to 30 years.
Okay.
But it was not a board adopted policy, which is why
I see.
the board had requested us.
I see. Okay.
For this, so.
Any other questions from the board? All right, and we do have one hand up from the public, Rachel Pritzker.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask two questions. I wanted to understand what financial institutions were consulted on this. So how we came up with the statement that this won't affect any financing for projects, because what we're seeing a bit on our end is if you can't cover the debt service ratio on some of these projects, in addition to how expensive financing has gotten in construction, projects are not penciling, especially ones with income restrictions. So I wanted to understand how that was evaluated, and if there would be any mechanism, if the climate gets worse or people have trouble getting financing, to look at this, especially in comparison to some of the lack of subsidies that are easy to get to help make this work. If there's a any sort of analysis or reflection period to make sure that this isn't another layer of difficulty for affordability to be provided. I think we want to do stuff in theory, but sometimes it doesn't work out, and just want to make sure there's an opportunity for us as a city to revisit that. We want to make this more attractive, not less.
If I could address how the staff approached it. So what we did was we looked at previously submitted applications in areas, and what we looked at also in terms of affordability, because partly we look at what PHFA rents are and how they increase. What we found was that PHFA rents year over year were increasing by 6%. Then we compared them with what the rents are in areas where we had approved certain developments that fit into this category. And we found that there was not much difference between the market rents in the area and the affordability rents. That had an impact on it. And then we just would look at what the impact was. Now, mind you, this research was starting before the series of rate hikes. So the current financing climate, right, is a factor, but when we were doing our research, that wasn't a factor at the time. I would also state that with a lot of this in certain areas, we also factored in that there's mixed income neighborhood, overlays, where regardless for mixed income use, if you were building up or you had a large development in certain areas, you were going to end up with a 50% AMI 50-year deed restriction, income restriction, in which case we were going to, this 30 years was less than what would have to be complied with for the mixed income neighborhood requirement.
And I would also just note that under the disposition policy, an affordable unit is up to 120% of area median income, which is $100,000. So I don't think it's that restrictive to think that a unit could be affordable to someone to a household making $100,000 for a certain period of time. I'm going to recognize Board Member Johns.
Yes, just the idea that there is a period of time to sort of consider the effect of this resolution, and I guess I'm sort of piggybacking on Rachel's comment. Have there been folks outside of the agency engaged developers or finance folks to kind of, sort of flesh this out a little bit more. I guess I'm concerned that we just, so it's saying now 30 years and that's it. Particularly since, interest rates are fluctuating and we don't know kind of what's going to happen. Is there a way to have a variance in that resolution? I guess is the question.
You mean to lessen the number of years of compliance?
Well, I'm trying not to stymie the ability of developers to engage in affordable housing, and 30 years is a long time.
I think the biggest impact that we had, which I was shocked at, was looking at what were affordable rents. And we, like I said, we use PHFA and we actually looked at what the trend was. PHFA year over year is going up 6%. And when you look at PHFA rents from efficiency to 3 bedrooms and all of that, and then you look at where our inventory is, those rents are keeping up, or maybe $100 less than what the market rents are in the neighborhood. I think that was a big telling issue for us. So, having this affordability piece, I mean, it's, if you, and again, the genesis of this request was the board's request that there be a longer term of affordability. So we looked at that. So I don't know if you remember this, but there was kind of a pushback as to would this stymie, any applications from developers. But when we looked at it, the numbers were the numbers. I mean, was there a marginal issue? I mean, I think the numbers penciled out as marginal. And yeah, I can't speak to the fluctuation in the construction lending market or how this would get converted over to long-term financing and debt service. Again, we started this prior to the increase in interest rates. But what we looked at was, year over year, what would be the trend?
Yeah, I think that was my question is it in consideration with the existing context? Because as I think everybody knows, depending on who you are and what your experience is, you get different financing, you get different terms. We don't all walk into the bank and get the same rates and terms. So especially if we're trying to expand, minority development, women-owned development, those are typically groups who have a tougher time on the financing side. So as far as, and same with the conversation around, the nonprofit development of affordable housing. So I just wanted to understand, given the current climate, again, it's very, very challenging out here. And just also if we're trying to have it be that, women, minorities, nonprofits, and those folks are participating in this, that also is just a challenge from a financial perspective. So wanted to, again, reiterate that I think it's important that we don't operate in a vacuum and we engage with these financial institutions who are lending to these types of projects, to these types of groups, to ensure that we're doing something that's aligned with what they also could finance. So that we're not in a situation where we do 30 years, which I don't have any issue with, but I just want to make sure it's feasible is all. I don't have any issue if it's 100 years, as long as people can actually do it. And I think that's really our goal here in the city, is how do we get more affordability and open up avenues for other folks, not the typical 10 developers who are well-financed and resourced, to be participating in that. So, that's really where my head's at with it, and just want to make sure that we're doing things that are really thoughtful and inclusive in that way.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think part of this is, what are we talking about when we're talking about affordable housing, and how are we defining affordable housing, right? Because I just very quickly looked up 120% of area median income is almost $126,000 for a household, right? If you take 30% of their income, that's $3,100 a month in rent. I don't think that's unfinanceable, and I don't think that's a hardship, right?
But is that what this board is typically pushing for?
Well, no, but under what we're talking about here, again, is, and let me finish, please, is unsolicited RFPs. And how you get that, and you're able to get that, is 51% of your units have to be affordable to 120% of median or below. So I think probably what we're talking about is, for me, if you're doing 120% of median, yeah, it should definitely be 30 years. If you're doing 60 or 80%, I get that the financing may not work and we may need to look at a shorter period. So, I mean, maybe what we're talking about here is we need to look at, and I don't want to make it too complicated, but are there different periods based on what your true affordability level is? And maybe that's something that we have to consider, because I do agree, you know, we're not subsidizing these units. And if the affordability is very deep, then yes, the deals may not pencil at a deep affordability level. But it's going to be very hard to convince me that at 120% median that these deals will not pencil. But I do think if we, as a board, and I think as a board, we are trying to push for deeper affordability, then these longer affordability periods may very well impact the ability to get the deals financed.
I think that's a great idea, and I apologize for interrupting. Definitely a lot of value in hearing the rest of your thought. I would wholeheartedly agree with that, especially because, again, the board is usually invested in, same with the council offices, trying to get, for those folks who really mirror the large majority of people in our city who need the housing, which is typically not at the higher, 180 to 120. So I think allowing somewhat of a sliding scale. I know New York has a model where they sort of incentivize, the more affordability you provide, the longer the benefit. They do stuff that's more of a carrot than a stick from an incentives perspective, but it's reflective of, like you're saying, what we're trying to incentivize and what we can make to encourage that. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Thanks. Thank you. Next, we have Mo Rushdie.
Good morning, Anne and Madam Chair and everyone on the board. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of the projects that are on city land, the market rate homes are probably in the 85% to 100% AMI.
Mo's up, so it doesn't look like you're going to get there within the 5-minute period I gave you.
Sorry.
Can you?
Excuse me, board member. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Mo. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Are falling in the 85 to 100% AMI. So I agree with you 100%. If someone is going to in and going to be putting the 51% affordable homes at 120% AMI, really you're covered for the next coming 15, 20 years with the rent increases. You're going to be fine. I think the whole intent, though, of developing on city land on proactive applications is that you're using the market rate of homes, the 49% of market rate homes on public land, which is sold at nominal values, that you're able to cross subsidize into the 51% and reach lower AMIs. I'll give you an example. We're doing a 500 unit job. That 500 unit job barely got financed. Land was less than $10,000 a unit, but barely got financed at 1.15 net coverage, right? But 100% of the homes are between 75% to 100% AMI. Now, what we have to recognize in today's market, that an 80 unit apartment building that costs $20 million had a mortgage of $89,000 a year ago, and today it's $130,000. That's an average of $500 more cost for financing per unit, okay, on the whole job. So I think what you said is a great proposal here, which is, if you're going to do the affordable units at 60% to 80% AMI on that 51%, your sub 80% AMI, I think the 30 years is going to be a deterrent for getting these jobs financed. You're just not going to get these jobs financed. And if you say it's 30 years for 120% AMI, I think that is the only application you're going to get through the board, is a lot of 120% AMI units
Thank you. And next, I'm going to go to a phone number that ends in 552. Go ahead, 552. You should be able to unmute yourself. There you go. We should be able to hear you if you want to provide your comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. All right. This is Adrian Fernandez of Swamp Poodle Neighborhood Parcels Association, RCO. And I want to comment on the amendment to the 3 resolutions. I'm requesting that that the vote for these 3 be held. The changes, the increase in AMI is going to have negative impacts in the communities that are losing lots of land to land bank that's being transferred for majority market rate housing. In conjunction with this, there's a bill in City Council right now, Bill 221015, that is attempting to reinstate tax abatement for properties that would fall within the type of developments that this resolution is you're trying to amend the resolution for. So overall, this would bring negative impacts to communities with lots of vacant lots owned by the city or being transferred to the city, and saying that houses that are 265,000 or apartments that are over 3,000 a month are available to be rented by persons, families in those communities. I also think the land bank needs to make a fact sheet that has information about the changes in the AMI that are in plain language for especially the RCOs, who are many times holding public meetings about development for these properties. I do also agree with Rachel Pritzker that the banking, the financing by banks, that information needs to be placed in plain language, so at the same time RCOs can understand the financing side of the situation. I came into the meeting late because your Zoom information was pretty difficult to find, and RCOs are not receiving land bank notices every month as required. We're not receiving that, so it was difficult to get into the meeting. I had to call PHDC CEO to get the information to get into the meeting because it was not coming up on Google. So again, I'm asking for the reasons I stated, and there's other reasons, just trying to be brief, that the vote for these 3 resolutions, which are amendments, be held, because there's not enough commenters here from RCOs, from developers. There are a good amount from development side, including the legal, the comments from lawyers. And these amendments will have a great impact on the public. The 30-year mortgage for the change in the AMI, the change in the lowest price of homes and the lowest rents for apartments, that's a very long time, especially to make that change in the period of COVID, where development costs are higher because of special circumstances. Under COVID, they're not permanent circumstances. So what happens when the price of construction materials and even labor corrects to another market price, a lower market price, and now these properties are overpriced for the 30-year mortgage period. So I think that needs to be investigated more. And overall, I think those 3 resolutions should be held, and a fact sheet should be prepared by Land Bank and be distributed to RCOs and others in our development communities, so we all have the same information and we all have clear information about a complicated process that is linked in with other complicated processes like Bill 22-1015, which is linked to the state bill, PA House Bill 581. So this is all pretty complicated, and the overall, I agree with the board member who said that in some of these cases, the affordable housing is actually going to affect and trend gentrification. I put that in my own words, but that's basically what he said. It's promoting gentrification. I have no intention of, no interest.
I'm
in a
sorry, I'm going to
Philadelphia
need
that
you to
follows
wrap
the-
up. Okay, we got to get to some other folks. So if you could just wrap up really quickly,
Okay.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, lastly, I'll say that to create a model that looks like New York, which for affordable housing is a failed model, is not something I want to see Philadelphia follow. And that's the
Thank you.
extent of my comments. You're
Okay,
welcome.
thank you so much. And then next we have Jahad Ali.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. I just want to agree with you. I thought that the 30-year thing is the 30-year mortgage restriction. I don't see that as a problem, because really what we're really talking about is making this affordable in the year up to 2053. So, it depends. It is a complicated subject, but it's not complicated for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, everybody has a different perspective and a different agenda. But I think this board has an agenda to ensure affordability in the long-term future. God willing, I wish I could say I would be here in 2053. But even though I'm not here, I think that this effort of this board, that will be there. And I think you should hold your ground on that, because really that's what we're doing. We've had instances in Mr. Goodman will tell you that whole issue at 40th and Market was because people weren't looking forward to the future. And you see how that worked out for us. So I think the board should hold the ground on that, and so be it. And if these established market rate developers are not there to do those projects, you already know that you have that developer that's doing the 4C3 project. Those type of developers will be here. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Thank you, Mr. Ali. And we have call-in user 1.
Hi, Tiffany Green, concerned citizens appointed, please. I agree with the young lady who spoke. This bill need to be, these resolutions need to be sent out to the RCOs. It need to be put, and also need to be addressed, because nobody knew about these resolutions coming through, number one, and that's not right. In reference to these prices, I just had this discussion with Councilman Johnson. The problem with this is that the city, when you have these prices like 253, 276 or whatever, the thing is that we cannot focus on just development costs. We have to talk about the impact on the community in which you are building these homes. What we originally asked for, because Point Breeze was one of the first come with this was complaining about this, is that we wanted any support, neighborhood preservation, put on the front end so that the housing price will be like $170,000, $180,000. What you're doing with this 253 and 276 costs is that you're opening up the door for $400,000 or $500,000 developers and realtors to come into these low-income Black areas and then begin to gentrify them, okay? Because like developers tell us, oh, well, you know what, the city's selling their properties for $250,000, so we're just a little bit above that in terms of $400,000 and $500,000. And that is what we can't have, because let me tell you what the impact of this is. First of all, when you sell a house at $250,000, you are increasing the property tax assessments in the area. The property tax assessments increase the property rents, okay? And also at that particular point, everything else begins to get an increase. So the city would be really pushing this, because then you have other landlords who at this particular point will want to either begin to sell, increase their rents, long-term landlords and everything. It's a ripple effect. The city should not be in the business of selling $250,000 homes using city property. You must find a way to fund these homes and put it on the front end so they stay at 150 to 170 so we can have a more wider participation in terms of buying these houses. It's not about the developer and his development cost. It's about the impact that you're going to have on these neighborhoods, these untouched neighborhoods around Philadelphia, where you begin to gentrify them. And if that's the case, then Philadelphia is the real gentrifier. This point, this right here, I'm going to send that out, asking that this resolution be put on hold and that we have a discussion about this, because you cannot go into these untouched areas with these type of prices. You're going to impact everybody else. It's not just about the developer.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Oops, sorry, we pushed the wrong button. And I'm going to recognize Alex Below.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say I appreciate all the information as a board member, and I'll just say that on this particular agenda item, I think it's healthy for us to revisit this policy if it doesn't prove to be effective, and I think it's healthy for any organization to revisit their policies. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Board Member Goodman.
Yep, so I think related to that, I hope that we do, make a motion on this as it exists. This has been a topic of much discussion in the policy committee going back more than a year. And I know, 2022, the predominant kind of RFPs that made it to these agenda items were homeownership related, but we still have seen, rentals and a mix of homeownership as well as rentals. So I do think this is still very much relevant. And, and we know also that the reality is that 80% AMI is still, the 80% AMI rents are still very much market rate in many of the communities where city vacant land is. The 30-year term brings us into kind of better, more common practices with other kind of entities like us. This does come with the significant reduction of, land sale price. I know that's not the same as an operating subsidy, but we're still, disposing of properties for, $1 each, $100 each, whatever it might be. And also many of these kind of mixed income rental dispositions or the subsequent development projects do also come, as was already stated, with sometimes even stricter terms. Most of them are pursuing the density bonuses that have 50-year deed restrictions attached to these, and this term is just 30. So I think it makes sense. And then, as Alex referenced, later, maybe we revisit. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Board Member Sauer.
Sorry, I just wanted
That's
to
okay.
sort of concur with Andrew Goodman's comments there. And the other thing I would say is that thinking back over the last couple of years when unsolicited, unsubsidized, mixed income developments have come before the board, my recollection is very few of them are below 80% of I. Most of them are 100% or higher AMI. So again, if we're giving away public land at a significant discount to achieve a public good, we got to make sure that that investment we're making is going to last for a significant period of time.
Great, thank you. All right, Board Member Gonzalez.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to put, add context to the conversation. When we're talking about affordable housing in many of the neighborhoods in Philadelphia, we're talking about families that are just barely making 50 or 60% AMI, households that are making $50,000 to $60,000 a year. That's, when we're talking about affordable housing and really developing for that set. For us, 120% AMI, that's market. So I think it is appropriate for the disposition of, sitting on land for, to allow others to come into the space and develop housing for different demographics and different income levels. And I think it is fair and equitable to have a restriction of 30 years. I mean, I think that, ultimately, I think that's fair. And we need to preserve affordability in many of our neighborhoods longer term. I don't think 10, 15 years really does it.
Thank you. All right, just to remind folks, what's on the floor is a recommendation to approve an increase in the affordability period for unsolicited dispositions for rental units from 15 to 30 years. Right, the board, and I'm just going to lay out possible things that the board can do. Right, the board can make a motion that they want to accept that. The board can make a motion that they don't want to accept that, and the board can make a motion anywhere in between, which means you could say, for example, any rental units that were over 100% of median, 100 to 120%, it would be 30 years, and less than it would be 15 years, or any iteration in between. So I just want to sort of lay out what the options are. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
I second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to adopt the resolution, which it increases. Can folks mute themselves? Right. All right. So there is a motion on the floor that has been made and properly seconded, which is to accept the recommendation as it has been presented, which is to increase the affordability period for rental units through unsolicited proposals from 15 to 30 years. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That brings us to item to section 5 of our agenda, which is property disposition. The first one we have is one for affordable housing. I believe this has been heard before this board 4 times. So we will hear it again. We will do our normal process of having comments from the board, and then we will hear public comment. However, I want folks to understand during the public comment period, we will limit each commenter to commenting 1 time for a period of 2 minutes, because again, we've heard extensive public comment on this item already. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, I guess, Jesse to present.
Yep, thank you again. Item 5A today, we're asking the board to authorize the disposition of properties in the city's north central area to Savetta Property Group for the development of an affordable housing project in the 5th district. The proposal includes 70 single-family affordable home ownership units, all of which are 3 stories, ranging between 1,300 and 1,400 square feet, containing 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and sold to households with incomes at or below 100% of AMI. The maximum sales price for these units are $280,000. Applications were solicited via a request for proposals for the properties, and the applicant was the most qualified bidder for the properties. The addresses include 621, 623, 625, and 637 and 917 Diamond Street. On Edgeley Street, we have 924, 927, 928, and 936. On French Street, we have 926 and 928. On Franklin, we have 2106, 2112, 2140, 2141, 2142, 2143, 2151, 2166, 2170, 2172, 2215, 2217, and 2219 North Franklin. On North Marshall, we have 2112, 2130, 2144, and 2214. On Percy Street, we have 2105, 2107, 2109, 2110, 2111, 2112, 2113, 2119, 2121, 2133, 2140, 2143, 2146, and 2150. On West Susquehanna Avenue, we have 904, 910, and 915. On North 7th Street, we have 2102, 2109, 2114, 2126, 2128, 2130, 2131, 2134, 2135, 2136, 2150, and 2210. On 8th Street, we have 2101, 2113, 2121, 2155, 2167 to 69, and 2201. And finally, on 10th Street, we have 2124, 2126, 2131, 2150, and 2165. Sorry, that was on 9th Street. And on 10th Street, we have 2121 North 10th Street. The developer will purchase these properties at a bid price of $7,000. Evidence of the project financing has been provided. The applicant is in compliance and good standing with the city of Philadelphia. project subject to an economic opportunity plan. It will be subject to an irrevocable power of attorney and right of reverter reentry. Sale of all units will be subject to a declaration of restrictive covenants, and the units will be subject to use restrictions and income verification for a 15-year term. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. We did have a point of clarification in the chat that I'm going to recognize just to make sure that properties were listed as 904, 910, 915 West Susquehanna, but the agenda says 912, not 915. Can we just double check the Susquehanna ones? Is it 904, 910, and 912?
I said yes, that was correct.
Okay, all right. So just to clarify, it's 904, 910, and 912 Susquehanna Street. Yeah, okay, great. All right, any questions from the board on this item? Seeing none. Mike, I have seen the council president pop up. Is he here to comment on this item?
He was here to comment on the item.
I believe there he is.
Okay, there he is. All right, council president, is there something that you would like to say about this item?
Yes, first, thank you very much. I'm juggling between running the budget hearings and land bank and doing a number of other things. Thank you all and good morning. Just briefly, just like to take an opportunity to talk about this and talk about the Turn the Key program, which frankly, I think is an awesome program in terms of making affordability to home ownership in the city of Philadelphia, something that has gone way beyond a lot of people's ability to afford, given the unprecedented level of new housing starts in the city, and to some degree, the unprecedented values and the prices has been really problematic. So I want to thank all of the folks from the city, the various departments, and members of council who have worked together to make funding available to this, particularly the Turn the Key financing that allows us to write down the purchase price as it relates to the mortgage to significantly low levels, non-traditional levels, as low as 60% AMI, something that we don't talk about enough. I want to thank Senator Kitchen and a number of individuals who have hosted some meetings over in the neighborhood to talk to the residents. And I know that there was some conversations and issues about some of the parcels, and actually called twice, decided to personally drive through the neighborhood, and I actually called Mike Coons one Saturday morning and turned my camera on to show him the sites. And I must say that there are a number of the sites within the scope of this proposal that are somewhat questionable as to whether or not they should be a part of the package to move forward for home ownership. The small minority, and one of the things that I would like to see is us proceed with the land bank decision with the understanding that there may be some deletions prior to the introduction and passage of the resolution in council. I'm old school. I like to actually walk the blocks with the neighbors to get their perspective on their particular blocks, which we plan on doing with all of the pertinent people, to have a perspective on what should stay as a garden or what is realistically an opportunity to build a house. I saw a couple of relatively small lots. There is a timing issue in terms of making sure that we get these folks in the queue. There's money available. We had our public hearing recently. I know you talked about a 2-minute limit, Ms. Badulin, but that's very difficult for politicians to do. I'll try to be as quickly as possible. So we will have a further conversation. We will have on-site visits with residents on the block. And anybody who is interested, I'm gonna reach out to Senator Kitchen to see if she's interested in participating in that walkthrough. We've already identified the block captains to get the perspective. And when people are comfortable with the proposed, likely altered proposal, we would like to be in a position to move forward with the resolution, but we can't do that until we get the sign off from the land bank. So that's pretty much, and I want people to understand the price points will be much lower than the flyers may indicate. They will not be at 280 once the mortgage subsidy is put in place. They can be as low as under 200,000. That more than meets the 80% median income opportunity.
Thank you, Council President. We appreciate those comments, and we appreciate you showing up at a land bank board meeting.
Yeah, I gotta get back on budget. And if there are any questions of me, I'm prepared to answer them.
Does the board have any questions of the Council President?
There being
Seeing none, I think you
Thank
can
y'all
go
very
back
much.
to your other business. Thanks so
Gotta
much.
go back and count the money for the citizens of the city of Philadelphia. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right, Andrea, did we receive any comments from members of the public prior to the meeting on this item? You're muted.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We did. We received a letter from, well, an email forwarded to us from Wesley Corbin, who attended the community meeting and sent an email which was distributed to the board stating that he I'll just read it since it's a brief one. I've lived in North Philadelphia since before we used zip codes. My family home is titled 1952. I have watched the neighborhood go from middle-class white working families to a neglected community. The people who remain feel we have been overlooked until now as we see an influx of out of the community investees. We were told nothing. When most of my neighbors knew about the change coming, it was because of the noise from digging. Civetta was the first firm to my knowledge to come to the neighborhood for their for the neighborhood's point of view. I do not have I guess I do not have a problem about who does the work, but I do want the hood to thrive. I'm told all units are family residents. This I am pleased with because it helps us remain a neighborhood and not just a destination or investment to walk away from. I like the fact that the firm is from here and the owners live in the city. From my point of view, this deal was made before most of us knew. However, I believe the project will give residents more benefits than takeaways. Therefore, I've decided not to challenge the Civetta construction plan to build units in North Philadelphia. Progress must continue, and I believe at this time this is the best path. That was one. The other was from Mr. Charles Deiches. It says, my question is what has changed since last Zoom meeting? And this we just received this morning. Why is the land bank so in a rush to give these properties to this developer? What about the lots we took care of for years? We want compensation. Each lot is a different size. How can every house cost the same price? I would like to know, there's some questions about benefits to the board or to the council member. Who's authorized these meetings so soon? I guess you guys don't respect the community. Both of these emails will be appended to the minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, and with that, we're gonna open it up for public comment. We're gonna go to call in user one, and just again, remind people 2 minutes and state your issues, and we're gonna move on. Thanks. Go ahead, call in user one.
Hi, Tiffany Green, concerned citizens. I have a concern about Mr. Silvetti constantly getting these projects. I think this is turning into a monopoly of some kind. I think there should be more of a program to work with, particularly minority developers, to help get part of these land and this wealth. I mean, it should come in monotonous to see he has gotten a project under Councilman Curtis Jones' project, and now this in North Philly and other areas. Because I mean, when we talk with him, I mean, he's using his wife as the minority contractor, and for a lot of African Americans, see, that's where we lose out, because his wife is being used as the minority contractor. And so therefore a minority business is not really contributing, is not getting any kind of support that I know of at this particular point. Now, haven't seen all the details of this particular project, but if it's what he's done in Point Breeze, he used his wife as a minority contractor. And that's a problem. Again, I'm going to go back to, you say turn the key. I say turn the neighborhood. You're turning the neighborhood. with a $250,000, that's $250,000. You want to sit and say that these price points in terms of mortgages and everything. I'm saying in terms of impacting the neighborhood, long-term residents, that's $250,000 home that you are selling. Okay, we need to work on finding funding that will lower it down to 170 and 180 so that more people can participate. Everything is not about the city workers, because I'm not even sure if they're going to go with this program. You have people who are making $15 an hour or less. They want housing too, single family home. And so therefore we have to change this whole concept of $200,000 level, because you're opening up the door for private market to come in and sell at $300,000 and $400,000 level in these low income Black and minority communities. You have to see the impact that you're having on long term and the private area. People can't invest back into the neighborhood, because if the city going to sell a house for 250 or 280, then that means when a person down the street sell their home, they're going to sell comparable to that. So how's a young person just coming out of college or a young family getting married or something going to purchase a house at 250, 280? They can't find anything in the $100,000 range. So I'm asking the city at this point to really rethink this housing price and find other ways to bring it down. The $250,000 level is not working.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Appreciate that. Next, we have Perel Jure Simmons.
Yes, good morning. I want to start off by saying to the board that more than 80% of Philly residents are in the dark. These meetings are not transparent. The land bank, your board is giving away this land, and you keep saying that you're preserving the communities and this is progress. Again, Mr. Clark just spoke of, he was in the neighborhood and was surveying about on Saturday or Sunday, and he spoke to some prominent figures. Which people are prominent? Because we've been conducting meetings, we've been surveying, knocking on doors. So it's really hard to understand how you guys are making these decisions and you're not giving the information to the community to even understand what decisions you're making. And you guys are making these meetings every month. Nothing is changing. No one is coming to our meetings to speak to us or explain or educate us on exactly what your plan is. All we hear is developer, 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 profit, profit, profit. Where is it actually an opportunity for us as people in the community? We don't understand how the city workers are becoming a priority over the actual people of the community. And I just want to know, why did you guys let Mr. Clark off the phone so quickly? Because we should be able to address our questions to him, since he appointed your board to be over our neighborhood and just make decisions for us. Why does he not have to speak and address us as the president council member? We didn't vote for any of you guys. We didn't vote for you guys. We don't know any of you. We don't even know if you guys live in the city. You have a lot of investors and developers on these calls that are speaking to the numbers and the pricing. We don't need to hear about numbers. We need to understand how you guys are just taking and giving away the properties that people have taken care of and maintained. You guys have not informed us with enough information. And every month we just coming back to these calls for what?
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Next, we have Mr. Blatstein.
Hello, board.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for kind of really trying to dispose of city-owned land for the Turn the Key program. I guess I have a question that doesn't have to be answered right now, in terms of at what point in the process was City Council President Darrell Clark involved in understanding what pieces of land were getting put up for this RFP. This RFP has been out there for months, and for him to come in here and kind of say that he had an issue with some of the lots seems like it is kind of counterintuitive, because he's known that these lots have been on the board. So that's my one point. The other point is just kind of what other people have been saying about housing costs are at an unattainable level throughout the city. The only way we can kind of start to lower the prices by building more housing. The Turn the Key program is that program, and like Darrell Clark said, it's really the price of these houses is under $200,000, and it really is for workforce housing for city workers. The last point is just in order to build more housing, there has to be a better understanding of community outreach and who is responsible for that. So my question is like, when we're going about this, is it the city council person, or is it the developer, or is it the land bank who's responsible for educating the community about these programs and what they're doing with their land in the community? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jihad Ali.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and members of the board. I just wanted to give you an update. I've been down here to the 4 times that these hearings have been, and that's only because of the notification that I received from the General Counsel and Executive Director and your person, Tony, that follows up. So that's why I'm always on time. So the system works. People might not be aware of how you have to utilize the system. So maybe you could do more marketing on that, but it definitely works as far as letting you know about these meetings. And I just wanted to tell you, I've had some conversation about Mr. Savetti in terms of MBE participation. I wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, and the Executive Director, I guess, and also Gary Jonas, because each one of you I've talked to about the need for me to speak to him, and he did reach out, and we're going to have a dialogue to talk about MBE participation. So I know that wouldn't happen without your help. Thank you.
That's great. Good news. Great to hear. Next, we have Zachary Frankel.
Hi, board. Thank you for taking the time. I just wanted to chime in and say that my firm supports the development of affordable housing and encourages the development of these parcels.
Thank you. And next we have David, who I'm sure is going to ask about those same lots again.
Yes, I don't need to use my whole 2 minutes, I guess, but just to remind you, I have the garden on Diamond Street in Marshall. It's 621, 623, 625. It's been a community garden here since the 80s. And I replanted fruit trees that had been here for decades. In 2014, they've been bearing fruit, and they're full grown. And we have a relationship with the school around the corner, with the agriculture program and also their carpentry program to maintain the wall, which needs some repairs right now. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've also worked with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. I'm the head of the North Philly Tree Planters Association. Have planted a lot of trees in the area. I'm also the block captain for this block, and have been living here for almost 20 years. So yeah, I don't want to see this green space get taken out. I heard what Darryl Clark said. I agree with that even if this does move forward, that we at least need to look at some of these lots within the entire grouping and see if at least some of them can be preserved as green space. So that's basically what I wanted to bring up.
Okay, thank you. And we'll make sure that it's reiterated that those lots in particular should sort of get a second look.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Next, we have Mike Tomasetti.
Sorry, Ann, it's Brennan.
Oh, it's Brennan again. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I just
Get
wanted
me
to
every
address, I just wanted to address for the record, the comment about use of the wife. So for the record, I was the founder of Chivetta Property Group over 25 years ago in Philadelphia. My partner, my husband, and I have been working together for over 20 years, investing in real estate in the city of Philadelphia, and are really proud to be working and achieving the MBE and WDE goals, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you. And next we have Dawood Bey.
All right, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Again, y'all, I just wanted to jump in and add my 2 cents. But I really do think that this MBE program and the whole turnkey program it's actually beneficial. I just wish that we could get some consistency, not just from people, the layman folks, I would say, within the community, but the community organizing, the community activists, people like that, to get some kind of consistency on what it is that they want. Because me being an African-American contractor and a certified minority contractor, I still see the same people giving the same pushback, even when I come up to try to do programs and things like this to this extent. And we're just trying to figure out what is the consistency. Who do they want to build these type of properties? Because you got people like myself and my wife, trying to do affordable housing, and we still get the same kickback from people within our community. So my thing is like, let's try to get some consistency on who we want and try to, to see if we can make more strategic partnerships like we're doing with Cavetta. I believe I'm doing like 26 houses for them right now in Wharton Street area and Grace Ferry area. And I believe with our minority participation has been, building a lot of strong community morale. And I just think that people should continue to see these type of partnerships going on in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bay. And next we have Charles Deitch. Mr. Deitch, it looks like you had unmuted yourself for like 2 seconds and then somehow muted yourself again, but you should be able to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
My question is, how does Darryl Clark want you guys to vote on properties when he don't know which ones he's going to take off the list and which ones he's going to keep on? It's like every month, nothing has changed. The developer don't know nothing. His wife's supposed to be the one that founded the company, but she hasn't came out here to speak to us, and neither has Darryl Clark. He gets on this call and jump off, but nobody never spoke to us. Yes, Miss Kitchen come down there and she just say that they chose her to sit in the meetings. So nobody from the city, nobody, they just give us a little flyer with these numbers on there, but the numbers are wrong. And each lot size is different. So how you gonna charge the same price for each block? Each block is different and the lot sizes are not the same.
Thank you, Mr. Deitch. Next we have David Fecto. David, no, hand came down. All right, let's go to Jetty Fields.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to circle back to what one of the other callers was talking about in regards to the cost of the developmented properties being around 250,000, even 200,000. I think is pretty astronomical when you're in these crime infested, urban communities, and it's drawing more people into our communities. Being a property owner in one of the communities, it makes me wonder what type of considerations is the board making regarding us when the properties around us are increasing in value, increasing our property taxes. How do we be able to continue to afford our property taxes to keep our homes so we're not in a position of losing them and going into apartments and things?
Thank you, Ms. Fields. And next we have Mo Rushdie. Can we unmute Mr. Rushdie, please?
Thanks again, Madam Chair, Board, for allowing me to speak today. I just want to say again, to put things in perspective, we're short 37,000 affordable homes. People who are making $25 and $30 an hour deserve affordable housing. Yes, the word affordable might be misleading, that it might sometimes mean low income, but affordable housing is someone that's making $50,000 or $55,000 a year was able to get a single family house, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,200 square feet house in a neighborhood that is selling homes at $500,000 and $600,000, yes, that's affordable. Now we have you know, I'm going to talk on behalf of the BIA. The BIA has supported the 1% construction tax, so that city council has this great effort of the MPI, Neighborhood Preservation Initiative, thankfully that Council President Clark introduced, and we supported him for that, so that we can use these funds, right, to tackle the issues that are being discussed today. So yes, these homes are for, you know, 250,000, but there are tools that the city has, that city council has, to buy down rates, to give second mortgage, second mortgages, down payment assistance programs, where we can then reach lower incomes. I just want to say that I support this this great development. I know it's been 4 times here, and I know that I've probably spoken a couple of times, and I sound like a broken record here. But we need to encourage hundreds of these homes to be built on these infills that are in these neighborhoods, making these neighborhoods unsafe, unappealing. And it's a great thing, and we should all encourage more like what the Civetta Group is doing here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everybody who had their hand up got the opportunity to speak. And so I'm now gonna, unless there's other comments or questions from the board, I'm gonna call a question. Can I get a motion?
I just have one quick question, Ann.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, Rick, I didn't see your hand up.
I know, yeah, I just stuck up my hand quickly. I know this is what, the 4th time or 5th time, I can't remember how many that's been on the agenda. And there's been some pretty consistent concerns raised by neighborhood residents. So is either the land bank staff or the developer able to articulate what additional communication has happened with neighborhood residents over the last couple sessions that we've been, you know, having this on our agenda, just to understand how things have progressed?
Sure, can we get the developer back on again? Go and unmute her and allow her to comment on that.
Hi, Ann. Yes, so we conducted the community meeting for Hentraft RFP on February 22nd at 6 p.m. And prior to that, we made 3 previous attempts at community meetings on November 15th, January 31st, and February 9th. And it is part of our program that we will continue to engage the community, you know, throughout the pre-construction and construction process.
Thank you. And Andrew Goodman, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. More just a process related question. So if the board votes today, but then subsequent, you know, meetings and conversations with residents and stakeholders and whatnot leads to a modification in the addresses and which end uses for which addresses, does it then come back to the board? How does that process work?
So if the board approves this allotment, it's not that we're adding properties. If properties fall off, they would be removed, and then that would be included in the development agreement, and that's what would be conveyed out. So, and also we would touch base with the council office prior to issuing any city council resolutions to make sure that we weren't working against ourselves.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, and we do have one more hand up in public comment for someone who has not had a chance to speak yet, Linda Black. So can we unmute her, please?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I have a few things to say. Not a question. I do want to state, and this will be short, I do want to state that the property, one of the properties under this list is already under development. So I'm not sure if the public needs to know that, but that's an important, or if the public doesn't already know that, but it's an important thing to note that one of the properties, 2 of the properties listed, at least 2 of the properties listed are already under development. That's 910, 912 West Susquehanna. And to that, I want to say the meetings about these properties and that Savetti mentioned. When there are zoning meetings, when there are community meetings around properties, more information, the information about the meetings needs to be passed out, needs to be distributed, communicated much better. There can be flyers that can be posted on utility poles. There can be information put in mailboxes for the surrounding area. However those meetings are communicated, it is not enough. It is not enough. It is not enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Black. All right. Oops, sorry. Everybody who's had their hand up has had a chance to speak at least once. And if there's no other questions for the board, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I move that we approve the disposition.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve this disposition. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And that brings us to item 5B, which is the disposition of a side/rear yard.
Thanks again, y'all. Today we're asking the board to authorize the disposition of 815 West Firth Street, to Carmen Gomez, the adjacent homeowner. The property is located in the 5th district and the application was evaluated pursuant to the disposition policy. The applicant's in good standing with the city of Philadelphia and compliant. It will not be subject to a economic opportunity plan since it's the development of a side yard. And the property will be subject to the 30-year mortgage use restrictions as just a side yard. Thank you.
Great. Any comments or questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, Andrea, did we receive any comment from members of the public prior to the meeting on this item?
We did not.
Okay, looks like we have a couple of hands raised, public comment. I just want to verify that these hands are raised for this agenda item, which is the disposition of a side yard at 815 West Firth Street. Tiffany Vaughn.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Hi, so I do have a question regarding the side yard in general. I realize this is it's in the same district, correct? District 5?
Correct.
Okay, and from my past understanding, I've come to learn that anything above Cecil B. Moore or anything below Cecil B. Moore is not being approved for side yards. And there's something nice about that consistency. I've been in conversations with Michael Kuntz and Jesse for 5 years about a lot that is next to me. I'm in the 5th district, but below Cecil B. Moore. And so I'm trying to understand a bit about the process. I wasn't able to join last month's meeting, but 1217 Pennock was approved, which is actually 2 blocks south of me for a side yard, similar size, similar situation, which doesn't seem equitable as we talk about the rules and regulations of why certain side yards are not being approved above and below certain points. So I'm just hoping to understand if you could provide clarity around why not all of these side yards in District 5 are being treated the same.
The best answer I could give you is that to your point, typically there is an area that was identified by the council office that an area where affordable housing would be the priority. So typically we do not consider side yards or garden applications and unless it's a one-off basis, and that is done, as you mentioned, in conversation with the council office. So I know that last month there was a property that was approved by the board. I don't believe that property has moved forward though. Am I correct in that, Jesse?
You are.
So again, we try to maintain as much consistency in terms of our application of dispositions. We do end up with one-offs because we work closely with the council office. I know that Michael Kuntz has his hand raised. Maybe you can add to that.
I think one of the reasons why that exception was made was because the 1217 Pennock Street property is only 700 square feet and it was believed to be a buildable lot. Whereas the property next door to, geez, I've forgotten your name already, Tiffany Bond, I believe.
You got it. Yep.
It is a buildable lot. They're not similar in size.
Well, I hear that, but in living in the neighborhood and walking past it every day and seeing the lot, they are the same size, maybe give or take a square foot or so. I guess more of like what the question is and the concern is, if we are going to have rules that keeps the community from caring for lots that are eyesores or really become poop graveyards for people's pets, then it should remain consistent. And so I would hope that there's a little bit of integrity held to that, because like for me, I've been trying and have been calling, Michael, I talked to you for 3 years, and then after you, I spoke with Jesse about caring for this lot, about all of the issues that were happening, being 9 months pregnant and like almost tripping on the side of the street because it wasn't paved. And, you've been helpful in trying to get those things fixed. But, as someone who's committed to the community, who lives here, who's a property owner, is planning to die here, we're just trying to make these vacant lots not vacant. And so it's a hard pill to swallow when an actual piece of land that's closer to Girard, that's even more expensive and even more desirable from an affordable housing perspective, is getting approved. It kind of feels like there's elbows being rubbed places, and that it's not fair and equitable across the board. So I want to just understand, because like I'm not going anywhere and I'm just going to continue to call all of you until I'm dead. So I just want to make sure, I'm getting a fair shake too, and the folks that are really committed to this neighborhood are getting a fair shake in taking care of the land that has remained vacant. And I think it's Savetta, I'm going to say it wrong, they're behind us. They're going to be taking over the whole street, and everyone on the street is really excited about it. We're not bucking this affordable housing. We think it's a great opportunity for our neighborhood, but there are 2 or 3 lots that weren't included in that bundle, and they remain open, and they're in between homes that have been built. So it doesn't really seem, it just isn't making sense, and it isn't adding up. And I'm just hoping to get clarity here.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Thank you. Appreciate that. And next we have Andrea Bibiloni.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Andrea Bibiloni. I'm an attorney at Philadelphia Legal Assistance. I represent Ms. Carmen Gomez. Ms. Gomez is 78 years old. She's a Spanish monolingual resident of 813 West 1st Street. Ms. Gomez traveled by bus this morning to my office at 7th and Arch so that she could participate in the meeting. She has been trying since 2014 to get ownership of this lot, and because of language barriers and other financial barriers, it has been very difficult. And so she is very excited, very grateful to have made it this far, to be able to speak with you all this morning. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Gomez to speak. She's going to speak in Spanish, and I'm going to translate for her.
Great, thank you.
Hola, mi nombre
Hola.
es Gómez. Como ya lo saben, y estoy ansiosa de saber si me van a aprobar, si me van a hacer realizar el sueño.
She says, my name is Carmen Gomez, as you know. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm really hopeful that you will approve my application, which has been my dream.
Y muchas gracias y espero que me tengan en cuenta porque en realidad lo necesito para yo estar tranquila y botar el estrés.
She says that she hopes that you really keep her in mind, that you think of her and her situation, and that you approve her because she really needs the lot. It is a place that she uses for gardening that helps her to stay calm and alleviates her stress.
Sigo luchando mucho, tengo muchos años luchando por eso y espero que este año se me haga realidad. Después de Dios y ustedes, y mil gracias le doy porque en realidad estoy muy feliz.
Again, she just wants to express her thanks and her appreciation. She's getting emotional because she has just been trying to get this for so long. It's something that she has encountered a lot of barriers, again, because of her language and not understanding English and all the complicated forms. And she just hopes that you approve her. She's thankful to you and to God for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. With that, I'm going to call a question. Can I get a motion on this side yard disposition?
Motion to approve the side yard.
I second.
All right. Motion has been made and properly seconded to approve the disposition of 815 West First Street as a side yard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. That completes that item. Now we're moving on to new business. As many of us recall, there was a lively discussion last board meeting about the garden mortgages on gardens, and we agreed that we would put it on the agenda. So we are going to discuss that further. This I think no, we're now in the afternoon. So I think maybe if we start with a sort of the land bank staff laying out some of the issues, and then we'll take some questions from the board, and then we'll go to public comment. So go ahead, staff.
Good afternoon, board. Just in terms of just setting elements as to giving the rationale as to why we apply the 30-year mortgage. First, I just want to say that I know last month there was an issue raised as to garden dispositions that were happening on the PRA side. I would like to inform the board that to my knowledge, Neighborhood Gardens Trust has agreed to accept a 30-year mortgage for 3 gardens that are being disposed of by PRA. And then secondly, I'd like the board to know that myself and Andreas Sa met with the PRA legal department to make sure that we had consistent language across the board. Items that we agreed to were consistent language for across development agreements, mortgages and notes, consistent and clear language defining what would constitute a default in the development agreements, mortgages and notes, and also clear and consistent language as to how to cure land, develop in the development agreements, mortgages and notes. These were items that we found were inconsistent and also unclear in both PRA documents and somewhat in land bank documents. We also agreed not to issue non-recourse mortgages for gardens and open spaces. These mortgages would be self-amortizing with a note of over 30-year term, and it would reduce by the same amount every year moving forward. There is one item that there was a bit of pushback between the 2 items, is how the mortgages would be assessed, whether it be fair restricted use value or highest and best use. I will say that that is an ongoing conversation between the land bank and the PRA. hopefully we can get to a resolution with that. The last point, although I'd like to highlight with the board, is that this type of coordination between agencies is really necessary because Land Bank doesn't actually operate in a vacuum or unilaterally. We have to work and establish operational agreements with the city, PRA. You know, one of the significant examples of that is interagency transfers. A lot of the subject gardens are held by multiple agencies and therefore have to be transferred. The agreement is to transfer them to the land bank for disposition. But with that, there were agreements between the three different legal departments to make sure that there was consistency and that each agency's concerns were addressed. One of those, which is front and center, is really the revised mayor's executive order, which is dated March 25th, 2022. In that executive order, the mayor outlines two issues. One, that any agency that's disposing of land has to have a certain recourse that is included with the disposition of nominal properties. But most importantly, and I'll read this directly from the thing, from the letter, is a restriction requiring that the failure of compliance with any term or condition established in connection with the transfer of title by the transferee will cause the title to the property to revert to the ownership of the City of Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority or the Philadelphia Land Bank automatically without conveyance thereof being required. This is different and significant compared to what had happened prior to the change in the disposition policy. As we all know, the disposition policy was revamped in 2020. This requirement is actually talking about revesting title, not maintaining the consistent use should there be a default. And that's significant. Based on that, after in negotiations with the three legal department and based on the experience that each agency had, it was agreed that in conjunction with the deed restrictions, a 30-year mortgage would be placed on the properties to comply with this item in the executive order. It achieves three things. It prevents the sale of property with or without the use of a title company, prevents the collateralization of the property, which hinders the agency's ability to revert title. And three, it ensures that for the agencies to revert title in cases of bankruptcy or a successful judgment in a lawsuit. Again, the standard is to revest title, not to ensure conformity with use moving forward. Based on the experience of agencies, each had experienced situations where title companies had ignored deed restrictions or had seen properties conveyed without title insurance. So in dealing with both all the legal departments, they felt that the best instrument to utilize would be a mortgage, and that most people do not ignore that. I think the exact phrase was, title companies sometimes miss a mortgage or a declaration, but it's unlikely that a title company will miss both encumbrances on a property. Then the next issue, more just to expound more on collateralization. The reason for not allowing a nonprofit to collateralize a property that it is received for nominal consideration is that it ensures our ability to take title back. Should there be a mortgage or a recourse grant from a state or federal agency that places that agency or the bank in first position, again, putting the agencies out of compliance with the mayor's executive order. And then finally, should there be a bankruptcy, a mortgage allows a public agency to negotiate with a bankruptcy trustee to attempt to regain title of the property, which is the objective. An example would be Germantown settlement properties. And also the mortgage is a preemptive measure that provides standing and recourse to regain title should there be a lien placed on the property, because we would be in first position if there was a satisfaction required for a legal claim against an insurance piece. I would, in closing, just say to the board that we are committed to continue negotiating in terms of the terms of the 30-year mortgage. I have to say that in discussions with the city and with PRA, there is no consensus to remove the 30-year mortgage for gardens and open space. And I think the board should, take that into consideration. And also, I think there's an issue of consistency. Part of this, when this executive order was put out, this applied to not just gardens and open space, but side yard dispositions, which also require mortgages to ensure that we are able to revest the land. And I'll just close there.
Great, thank you, Angel. Are there questions about this from the board at this point? This won't be your last chance to ask questions, but I'm just checking right now. Are there any questions from the board at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing a hand raised. So Andrea, did we receive? Oh, I am. Sorry. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I think based on experience, I think a mortgage instrument, unless there's something else that can be, that is available, again, I'm not an attorney, would be appropriate, to place it just to make sure that it acts as a trigger if there is a conveyance or if there's an encumbrance on the property, that the land bank is informed. I think the one thing that we need to have more discussions will be on the value, on what dollar amount, will be, just or equitable to, to place it on properties such as gardens. Because if we're talking about the best and highest value, I don't think gardens are going to serve that purpose. So I think just trying to arrive at an amount that satisfies both what the land bank is trying to do and also allow the groups to do what they need to do to raise resources for the preservation of these spaces.
Thank you, Maria. All right. Andrea, did we receive any comments from the public on this item?
Madam Chair, we did. And I will list the names and the organizations that sent extended comments. They have all been forwarded to the board for their review. And I will not summarize them because they are very extensive, basically raising the same points that had been raised in the past, but I do have to mention them. Teresa Elliott from North Square Neighborhood Project, Sonia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced, Sonia Gallagher from Soil Generation, Ruth Goldman from the Merck Family Fund, Mimi McKenzie from Public Interest Law Center, Linda Sofer from Spooky Garden, Josh Warner from Urban Creators, Jenny Greenberg from Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Elizabeth Way from Hawthorne Community Garden, Dennis Shelley from Peer Environmental LLC, Casey Kuklik from Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, Amanda Bach from Brewery Town Garden, and then Attorney Stuart Ebby also provided comments in conjunction with Mimi McKenzie's comments from Public Interest Law Center.
And I'm assuming they all are saying the mortgage is an issue and a problem.
Correct. And they will all be appended. They will all be part of the minutes, as were all the comments from the last meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right, we're now going to take public comment on this. Again, I'm going to limit it a little bit because we had extensive comment on this last time, right? But we didn't, unfortunately, have the ability to really have a discussion about it. But before I do that, I'm going to recognize that Rick Sauer has his hand up. Go ahead, Rick.
Sorry about that. Well, I just wanted to follow up on one thing that Maria Gonzalez was talking about with regard to the mortgage value that's assessed on it. I believe in some of the testimony that I read, it did talk about how many other land banks around the country use a much more nominal value, whether it's $5, $10, $20,000. And that while still having a mortgage recorded, I guess, if they do that. So I'd be sort of curious to hear both from land bank staff as well as some of the community garden organizations as to whether that's a potential, if we can get various city agencies to agree to it, whether that would be a potential way to enable this to work better.
One of the suggestions that was posed was using an easement, and that was discussed amongst the legal departments. And much like our deed restrictions and other items, what the experience of other agencies has been that is easily ignored. It's more of a, and I think in conjunction of looking at the idea is to stop the transfer of the title and have to allow the agencies to intercede prior to something like that. It's not what the experience has been is that it's after the fact, and then you end up in extensive negotiations with whomever has received title after there was some form of default or unapproved transfer of title. So the idea being that like an easement would not have made the case. I would say that I know that there was one case where the state had put a declaration on the deed, but I think the board needs to understand that when the property is conveyed, the property is that funding where there's recourse funding. The requirement is that you have title to the property, right? So, it'd be a different conversation if we were in a situation we knew beforehand, much like, other developments or other acquisitions where we know in advance that somebody is trying to get state funding for something. We would work with them and then negotiate who would be in what position for revestment issues. That was not the case there, but I think that the consistent message from the other legal departments was that an easement wouldn't work, a different type of declaration wouldn't really do that, because I know PRA places a declaration on properties and they've seen them be ignored, and so I hope that answers your question.
Rebecca. Rebecca, you have there we go. Okay.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, we've approached this topic last month and we're approaching it again this month. What are we discussing exactly? Like, there isn't really a motion. Like, what does this discussion lead to, like logistically or functionally?
Well, I think first we have to have the discussion, right? I think we have the discussion, and then based on the discussion, and again, I kind of defer to Andrea or about whether the board would then want to recommend that we put some sort of policy, something on the agenda for approval, I guess at the main board meeting or where we want to go. But I think some of that, the next step is going to be a result of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to go and let's recognize Mimi McKenzie.
Just making sure you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the Land Bank Board. I'm Mimi McKenzie, the Legal Director at the Public Interest Law Center. We appreciate that you've agreed to discuss the 30-year mortgage practice. We hope, although we are at the end of the agenda, I recognize we're competing with lunch and other meetings. We hope that you'll give this issue the consideration that it deserves. I had actually prepared some comments, but I think I'm just going to put them aside and just let you know that we have organized ourselves in order to ensure that you can weigh all the factors that are impacting this issue. And we want to avoid duplication of comments. So we would respectfully ask that you next call on Stuart Ebby, who is a real estate transaction expert who has come here today to provide comment on the most effective tools for conveying land, ensuring that restrictions on land are honored, and reclaiming land in the event that that becomes necessary. After that, Neighborhood Gardens Trust will talk about the impact that this mortgage has on state money that's supposed to flow to our city. Adam Butler from Cesar Iglesias will talk about the impact that a 30-year mortgage has on the financial health of a nonprofit. Josh Warner will then talk from Urban Creators, will talk about the equity issues raised by this practice. And then I think there are probably quite a few garden nonprofits and institutional supporters and funders who also want to comment. With that, I will thank you and respectfully request that you hear from Mr. Ebby.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that we want to hear from folks. But again, we talked about this for about an hour. We took comments for about an hour at the last meeting. So if the comments start to get repetitive, that it's just, this is a hardship, it's a hardship, it's a hardship, we don't want the mortgage, we don't want the mortgage. We would appreciate sort of consolidating and condensing those, because I think we get that that's the big issue and that's what we're talking about. But with that, and again, just please limit your comments as brief as possible, because we definitely want to get through this. Go ahead, Stuart Ebby, we will recognize you next. Go ahead, Mr. Ebby.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I just have to, I can't see you now.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a limitation, is we can hear you. I don't know why you can't see us.
Well,
I don't know why that is. You should be able to see us, but anyway, we can hear you. And so, and I assure you, we are paying attention. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's been a long meeting, and I take seriously your admonition to be brief. So let me cut right to the chase. For those who don't know me, I've been a real estate lawyer in Philadelphia. Actually, I'm retired, but I was a real estate lawyer in Philadelphia for 60 years. And I taught real estate as a lecturer at Temple Law School, and also for the last 15 years as an adjunct professor of law at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. I'm not here on behalf of any client. I'm not being paid. I'm here because Mimi McKenzie and Pilcop asked me to comment on this controversy between use of a mortgage and use of what I will call the traditional methods. Let me just very briefly talk about the traditional methods, the reverter, the restriction and the reverter. The board is concerned, and I just heard the executive director talk about this, that people could ignore recorded restrictions. You know, it doesn't matter because you can enforce them whether the people find them, ignore them, know about them. You have a right to enforce them, and you can always do that. I don't think anybody, I mean, I can always learn. I've never seen anybody, developer, buy a property in the city of Philadelphia without a proper title search and without title insurance, because you can't get financing without that. But again, even if someone did proceed without title insurance, that's not what's important. What's important is the restrictions are a matter of record, and therefore people ignore them at their peril. You can always enforce them. Similarly, I was interested to hear somebody say, I think it was the executive director, say that that the problem is someone buys or takes title to a garden and then can put a mortgage on it. But that mortgage has got to be subject to your prior rights. Has to be. When you give a deed subject to restrictions, your rights are fixed. And if I come in and take a mortgage on that property, I'm taking it subject to your rights. So it just doesn't make any sense to me, with all due respect, it doesn't make any sense to me to say that, somehow a mortgage can get ahead of it. And same thing applies to judgment liens or bankruptcies. We have a recording system in Pennsylvania. It's been the law since at least 1715. Your rights are fixed when you record your document, and nobody can get ahead of you. So it seems to me that's, the use of restrictions and a reverter is effective. It's been used since the year one. I don't see any reason to abandon it. The other thing I ought to say to you, which I find very interesting, is your mortgage, your note and mortgage. I don't think they're enforceable. I don't think they're enforceable. A mortgage note legally must secure, and I wrote the book on this for the Pennsylvania Bar Association. It must secure a debt or something which can be reduced to a debt. For example, a guarantee, a liquidated amount. What you are trying to do, it's perfectly clear from the context, is use a mortgage to secure, not a promise to pay a specific amount of money, but to do what you said you do, to keep this property open, not to develop it, to use it as a garden and so forth. Unfortunately, that is not something that a mortgage can properly be used for. And I think if I were on your side and I had the toolkit that you have, I would be very reluctant to use a mortgage when I could use restrictions and a reverter, because someday somebody is going to challenge the mortgage and say it's not enforceable, and they have a very good chance of winning. Because as I say, it doesn't secure a debt. Now you may say, or not you, Madam Chairman, but someone may say, wait a minute, we have a note. And the note says if you don't comply with your obligations, then you owe us whatever it is, $1 million. That's not a real debt. That's what any first-year law student will tell you. It's a penalty. If I say, I'll go to Whole Foods and do your shopping this week, and if I don't do it, I'll pay you $1 million. That's not enforceable. You don't have any damage. You may have damage if I don't go to the store for you, but not $1 million. It's an arbitrary large amount. You can't collect it. It's not enforceable. So I think that the traditional way of doing this works, and if it were I would stay with it. Now, Ms. McKenzie or others will tell you, and why the mortgage, as a business matter, gives the gardens a lot of trouble. But that's beyond my expertise, and I'll leave it to them. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Conclude there, and I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Mr. Eppy. Appreciate that. Next, we have 552. Phone number ending in 552.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead, please.
Hi, and this is Adrian Fernandez again. I just had a comment about what the last speaker was talking about this 30-year mortgage. This is only for gardens, is that right?
Right, we're talking about mortgages on community gardens right now. Yes.
And they're talking about 30-year mortgages?
On gardens, yes.
Okay. I also, in this case, and also in the affordable housing home and apartment case, talking about, I said it should be a fact sheet document, especially for the RCOs. So when these properties come up in public meetings, we all have the same information. The 30-year mortgage question, or even just talking about the gardens, which is just land usually with no improvements, buildings on the land, and or the affordable homes and affordable multi-units. from my experience, usually these type of mortgage restrictions are on improvements on the land, which would be buildings, and they're usually time-based with a penalty if the mortgage is not held for the period, which is 30 years. For the gardens, I agree with the last commenter that it's not clear if the 30-year mortgage can be enforceable when when it's land and there are no improvements on the land. So clarity is needed for these 30-year mortgages for the gardens and also for the homes and multi-units. Are they monetary penalty based or monetary and penalty based, or are they time based only, or some combination? And that's my comment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we have Jenny Greenberg.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for including the 30-year mortgage on nominal fee dispositions of community gardens on the agenda. I'm Jenny Greenberg, Executive Director of the Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Philadelphia's land trust for the protection of community gardens and shared open spaces. We've been working for over 35 years to protect 51 gardens around the city, totaling 13 acres of protected green space, and are working today with 25 additional gardens that ask for help with land preservation. We've worked closely with the Philadelphia Land Bank and Redevelopment Authority to protect gardens where community stewards have cared for city land for years, but have no assurance for the future. As Mr. Rodriguez recently stated, NGT essentially had our hand forced to agree to acquire 3 PRA-held gardens with a non-recourse 30-year mortgage. We asked for an extension on making a decision on those, and that request was denied, and we just couldn't risk losing them. But today I wanted to actually focus my comments on the work that we do with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to purchase gardens that have been lost to developers. And I want to talk about how the city's decision to add the 30-year mortgage, in addition to the deed restriction and reversionary language, restricts the flow of state resources to our city. The Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, DCNR, provides land acquisition grants for 50% of the market value of land or its development rights. And the Commonwealth awards millions of dollars a year for land conservation projects using an open space deed restriction to ensure the land is protected permanently from development. Before the 30-year mortgage, we had success leveraging the value of land bank dispositions dollar for dollar to bring additional state resources to our city, but not anymore. I attached to my comments, which hopefully you have, a letter from Ashley Rebert, DCNR's Chief of Land Conservation and Stewardship, stating that the 30-year mortgage places an encumbrance on the property that makes it ineligible for DCNR funding and puts it out of compliance with their policies. In other words, the Commonwealth interprets the mortgage as opening these properties up to being developed, making it a bad investment. In 2022, Pennsylvania passed the Growing Greener 3 legislation, which allocated $640 million in conservation funding. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Last year, NGT was able to raise $600,000 through DCNR to acquire threatened community green spaces. However, accessing that funding is contingent on having a match, and the 30-year mortgage prevents us from leveraging the value of city nominal fee dispositions to meet this requirement. PHDC staff have stated that the reason the 30-year mortgage is necessary is that the open space use restrictions could be missed in a title search. And so when nonprofits nefariously flip gardens to developers, the developers won't know that they're acquiring deed restricted land. If this is the actual concern, recording the deed restriction in a confirmatory deed, the way the Commonwealth does, makes it impossible to miss. I also attached to my comments the Commonwealth's confirmatory deed as a model. There's no question that 30-year mortgage weakens the protection of community stewarded green spaces, which help to mitigate so many of the health, public safety, and environmental threats Philadelphians face. And there's no question that a deed restriction with either a reverter or right of reentry clause in the event of a violation of the deed or purchase agreement is every bit as effective. So on behalf of NGT Gardens, I must ask, what is the real motivation behind this mortgage? Thank you.
Thank you. And next, it looks like we have Joshua Warner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Excellent. So my name is Josh Warner. I am Director of Capacity and Development at Urban Creators. We run Life Do Grow Farm at 2316 North 11th Street in the Hartranft neighborhood of North Philadelphia. We at Urban Creators have been doing affordability for 13 years. We haven't built any homes, but we've been home for dozens and dozens of neighbors, friends, youth, and seniors. We're a Black-owned and Black-run farm in a Black neighborhood. In that regard, we have, to use your parlance for affordable housing, we have over, let's say, 98% MBE, minority business enterprises, involved in our work in our garden. In the Fair Hill and Hartranft neighborhoods, especially given the amount of seniors and community input and community collaboration we've had over the years, we can also say that we're a healthy amount of WBE in our work in North Philadelphia. So I'm going to start with a question, and I'm not sure if the board can answer right now, but it goes along the lines of what Maria and what Rick Sauer had spoken on earlier before the public comment period. How does this board ensure that race, class, age, and abilities-based equity is maintained through these garden dispositions? We've heard a lot of figures, a lot of mortgage and jargon here, but really this is a matter of equity, as it was pointed out by two of your board members. We have disposition policies that you've heard and you can read in the comments that are unfair financially and really make it a problem for us to continue doing our work. If we look at public properties over the years in Philadelphia, many of these were acquired through foreclosure or eminent domain over the years. The city, the redevelopment authority, land bank, housing authority, whomever has gained ownership of these properties, that used to be private over the years. And in many cases that destroyed Black wealth in neighborhoods like mine. Over the years, like these public properties tend to remain vacant or attracted trash, attracted crime. These were eyesores and impediments on the existing neighbors around in neighborhoods. So not only did the city hold the land or destroy what wealth there was no attempt to really clean up or improve or whatnot. We Gardens have stepped in many, many neighborhoods across Philadelphia to do that work, to do the work of the public sector. We are also public servants. The costs maintained by neighbors in these neighborhoods with vacant land versus the benefits reaped by neighbors in areas with thriving gardens and thriving farms. We have done the work to turn these properties around. We have educated youth. We have fed neighbors. We have sweated. We have cried. We have laughed in all these places. And it just seems like a slap in the face to turn around and saddle these spaces with mortgages, with debt. I understand self-amortizing, all that, but we've done the work. We've done the work of the public sector. Now we are to bear the costs. That is patently unfair.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, I'm going to need you to wrap up.
Wrap up. Thank you, Chair. If we speak of a turn the key program, these gardens and farms and neighborhood activists, we built the doors for you. If you're going to turn the key and provide more affordability, we're the ones that built the doors. You owe us. We have done public sector work. This board needs to step up and recognize that. Mr. Rodriguez, you speak of the land bank and the redevelopment authority, like going back and forth in the nitty gritty of the details. Please invite us to those conversations. The policy committee of this land bank board, the staff of PRA and the staff of PLB, us gardens that have had skin in the game for decades, we deserve to make these decisions with you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Appreciate that. And next we have Naomi Smith. Go ahead, Ms. Smith. You should be able to unmute yourself. You're unmuted. We should be able to hear you.
Good morning. My
Good
name is
morning. How are
Randolph
you?
Smith. I'm a resident of East Parkside, and I'm a gardener. I've been gardening at the Viola Street Garden for over 50 years plus. The Neighborhood Garden Trust is in the process of working with the water department to pipe in water in our garden. We desperately need a stable and reliable source of water. The land bank's proposal is hindering our ability to get the water we need. Currently, we are connecting 4 water hoses to a fire hydrant around the corner to water our garden. Several of our gardeners are seniors, and this prevents a hardship to them and others. So we are asking the board to reconsider their proposal to place mortgage liens on gardeners. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Selah Lynch.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thanks. I'm a gardener and organizer with a garden called The Farm on Florence. It's in Southwest Philly, 54th and Florence Avenue. I guess I have sort of 3 sections. One is just why we're worthwhile. Our goal is just to improve the health and happiness of the residents in our community, as many gardens are. And sometimes affordable housing and like gardening seem in opposition, but I think all of our goal is to improve health and happiness of the residents of our community. But okay, sorry, more like specific. Some of the things that happen in our garden, like kids show up like preteen boys, and they're like eager to help us dig in the ground, play in the garden. It's just like a wonderful thing for kids to do. A kid the other day was excited to eat kale when he found out it was growing in the garden. He turned down chips in order to eat kale. So just some examples. We have a beautiful community. It includes many elderly people who have lived in this neighborhood for decades. It includes people who were dealing with isolation before. Anyway, I could go on, but health and happiness of our community is what we're devoted to. Our hope is that NGT will gain control of our land, and it can be a permanent green space. And really, I'm kind of going to echo what the previous gardener said. Like the on the ground effects of this 30-year mortgage are, that maybe it will take much longer for NGT to get our land, or, obviously maybe we won't get it. And one of the things that affects is us being able to make investments in the land that make it accessible. And to elderly people is a big one, or to disabled people. Water is a huge issue. We right now have a big IBC plastic tank that we string 3 hoses together, like across a street to fill up every like once a month. Having like a water pump that we could, I'm pretty sure, easily get a grant or fund, but it costs like thousands of dollars. Anyway, it would help the garden flourish to a huge extent. Having a shade structure is another investment we are dreaming and hoping to make, but we can't make this, kind of until we know we have like control of the land. And my understanding is just that the 30-year mortgage puts that in jeopardy, slows it down. And if we have it you know, there's always the risk. Oh, right, here's another one. Last one is just, another thing that makes me shiver is someone comes and dumps a bunch of construction, like debris, like that happens a lot in our neighborhood, just giant piles of construction debris show up. It's expensive and time consuming to remove this. And the thought that after 20 years that might happen, and then we lose like the garden because, you know, because there's a clause that says this garden isn't, you know, keeping clean enough. So anyway, I hope I painted an on the ground picture that is helpful in some way to you. Thank you for doing this, and I will be listening eagerly. Oh, wait, okay. I have a
Very
statement
quickly,
from-
because I got a lot of hands
Yeah,
raised
okay,
here.
all right, all right.
Sorry, I was one of those. I had to leave for a work meeting. I couldn't log back in. Sorry, I just wanted to one more voice on that front, especially in like the language of like clear and free of debris. The clear and consistent language thing on all these points sounds wonderful, especially on that. And so, yeah, sometimes we do get things dumped on the garden and it takes us a week or two to clean it up. We always clean it up, but I hate the idea of the garden being vulnerable to that sort of thing for that time. And also things like, yeah, if it's at someone's discretion, someone could walk by and see our rain barrels, which not the most attractive thing, but they're like great for the city, great for the garden. For that to be considered trash by someone, like it's not far-fetched. So I just wanted to just highlight that other point. And I really did like everything that everyone else said on the 30-year on the mortgage itself. So like, thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Eloise Young.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mill Creek Urban Farm, which is located at 49th and Brown Street in West Philly. We oppose the placement of 30-year mortgages on community gardens and open spaces. We have invested many years and lots of hard work and money in our green space. We urge you to stop this practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dennis Shelley.
Hi, thank you. I just appreciate the opportunity to just give a little bit of a different perspective on this. I'm private sector. I've been developing stormwater projects for 10 years in Philadelphia on private property. And in the course of doing that, I've realized that a lot of the work that I've done over the last 10 years has been one of projects that provide little to no community benefit, neighborhood benefit. And I was fortunate to get involved with a grant program that's funded by the William Penn Foundation that includes the Nature Conservancy and the Drexel Academy of Natural Sciences. And what we're doing is finding opportunities to use the money that the city, the water department is already spending on stormwater to provide greater neighborhood benefit than has been shown in the Green City Clean Waters Practice program during its first half-life. And what we're doing is we focused on historically underinvested communities, which is, it's no surprise, Northwest and Southwest Philly, and looking for like what we call anchor properties, identifying anchor properties, which tend to be schools, churches, that sort of thing, and finding ways to expand the impact of what we might do on a school property to a zone within the neighborhood, and the whole idea about bringing more green into the neighborhood. And in these communities, in these neighborhoods, conveniently or inconveniently, they also tend to be the concentration where the land bank properties are concentrated. What we are looking at is, let's build out from an anchor property in a surrounding, in an area, surrounded area, providing it, making a green zone. And a key part of that can be land bank properties, those that are, and from our purposes, the ones that are at low areas that tend to collect street runoff, gives us an opportunity to use water department funding to manage stormwater and then clean up the property and turn it over to a land trust or a community development organization to take long-term ownership of the property and a long-term responsibility. So from my perspective, what we're doing is providing new green spaces. Preserving the existing green spaces and gardens is incredibly important, but we also need to be looking at developing new green spaces, and we have an opportunity to do that. And if we restrict the ability of CDCs and land trusts to take title because of a a mortgage restriction, it's a wasted opportunity. To me, if we do build more green space in some of these neighborhoods, it's going to attract the development that we want and hopefully allow people to stay in their homes and make them want to stay in their homes. That's about all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. And next we have Jeff Carpenter. Go ahead, Mr. Carpenter. You should be able to unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry. I'm the president of Arcadia Commons. We shepherd 3 green spaces in East Kensington. We've been doing it for 10 years now. One of them has a lot that's been in the land bank process for 3 years now. Another park is the future one at Huntington and Emerald to be our firefighters memorial park, which will be the largest green space in the neighborhood when we get title. The Community Design Collaborative did a design for the park. We have raised over $100,000 so far, and we'll probably need another $150,000 to complete it. These properties from the land bank will probably appraise at around $2 million, far more than our current assets. So a recourse mortgage would put our balance sheet underwater in the eyes of potential funders of any kind. It would be impossible to raise the needed funds. We ask that you change from the mortgage policy back to your previous policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. And next we have Victor Young.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I have one question. You said a lot of this came about by an executive order. When did that executive order go into effect?
The original executive order was issued in February 2020. It was revised in March 2022.
Revised in March 2022. Okay, so an executive order expires. Will this practice still be in effect once an executive order expires if a new mayor goes into effect?
I asked that question specifically of the city law department, assuming that it would expire. The way the executive order was written is that it survives this administration. The next mayor would have to proactively rescind this executive order, either get rid of it totally or change it.
Okay, so my last statement is, from MGT board standpoint, we were forced to make this agreement because of that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Next, we have Malika Gilpin. Are we able to allow Malika Gilpin to be unmuted, please? There we go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. I know that we're all in a hurry, but before we go on, I just feel like we need to have a collective deep breath together. So if you could just take a moment and breathe in deeply. And let's exhale. And let's come together. We're here. People are missing their lunch. So thank you again. My name is Malika, and I'm here today representing One Art Community Center and One Art Oasis Farm located here in West Philadelphia. And I'm here, we're here, all of us, on the unceded land of the Lenni Lenape, the original people of this area. And, you know, as we think about the original people of the land, we think about all the land theft, right? And the tricks that have occurred over so many years and so long ago. But then, you know, this is why we are here today, because we are really protective of this land that we have put so much love in. And we've all seen in the past how things have flowed. We are here at One Art, and we've had the honor to be on this sacred land for over 20 years. With blood, sweat, and tears, we have cleaned, cleared, cultivated, and created an inspirational space where we can grow. And over the years, One Art has grown community and community space along with tons of food. With laughter, joy, and peace, we've planted seeds for a place where we can heal ourselves, heal each other, heal our families, our communities, heal this city, and heal Mama Earth. I've had the opportunity to speak multiple times at these land bank hearings. My first time was when the land bank was just being introduced, and I was filled with so much hope. For years, we were growing on land and the land was insecure. And finally, with the land bank coming, you know, on the table, we were like, yeah, this is going to be a transparent path to land ownership. Our city is finally investing in an agency that values urban ag and food sovereignty and the people who grow the food that help our communities to become healthy. So that was my first testimony. And then recently, my latest testimony was at the land bank hearing to get support for our farm, which after being told for years that it was safe, had actually been sold at a sheriff's sale. So the land bank was really instrumental in helping us get through and have a land swap. So we were really grateful. And once again, I'm filled with hope and sharing it widely, right? So that other gardens and farms could be reassured, because there is indeed a transparent path to vacant land being transferred into the hands of those who care for and nurture her. However, when reviewing the 30-year mortgage, I realized I totally got excited way too soon. And I'll be the first to admit, I have trust issues. We, you know, had hoped that the change in being made in creating the land bank would provide this this clear pathway. And right now, we don't feel like it's clear. We don't feel trust in terms of the contract in so many different ways that others have spoken about. But there's, you know, just eye to eye, like defining factors that we don't see eye to eye on. And, you know, according to the 30-year mortgage, there is land insecurity for through this land mortgage, this 30-year mortgage, if there's trash on it. Well, what's considered trash to you, we transform into treasure, reusing what's been discarded to create functional beauty. This 30-year mortgage suggests if the land is sited for weeds, the land can be negatively affected with this agreement. But what you consider weeds are our wildflowers. Is this mortgage really fair? Is it really necessary? As stated multiple times, we are a strong, united group of farmers, gardeners, lawyers, neighbors, youth, healers. We care, and we're willing to come to the table. So just call us to the table. We're ready. We want to talk about this. We want to go deeper with you. We want to collectively come together with a solution that actually makes sense. Thank you all so much for your time, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you, Ms. Gilpin. And next we have Kim Jordan.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm with the Philadelphia Orchard Project. I'm co-executive director there, and we are a nonprofit that works with a number of community-based organizations and farms and gardens all over the city. including One Art, including Urban Creators, including Neighborhood Square Project and Urban Tree Connection and other groups that you've heard from. And so I'm not going to reiterate what anyone else has already said. I appreciate you staying to listen to all these comments. The thing I wanted to focus on today is 2 plans that the city finalized this year and has agreed upon to pursue: the tree plan and the urban ag plan. Maintaining green spaces and growing spaces for people in this city is of vital importance, and it is something that has been agreed upon by a number of city departments that these are priorities. So I really hope that members of the Land Bank can take a look at all of the work that has gone into the urban ag plan, especially the planners and the team from Soil Generation and hundreds of growers and community gardeners across the city that have put into it, and all of the research that shows where are these gardens located, where are they most threatened, and why are they important there. They're important for equity issues, they're important for environmental issues, they're important because people grow food there that they need to eat. So I really hope that this can be an important factor in your consideration of this policy to make sure that the decisions that are being made about these spaces will take into account these city plans and these city priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Elizabeth Way, because I then want to give some time for the board to converse. So Elizabeth Way.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Great. I'm Elizabeth Way. I'm from the Hawthorne Community Garden. We're a garden space that got transformed from a construction debris dump into a 23 raised bed garden with sitting area that's used by families and children and neighbors in Hawthorne. We plant vegetables, flowers, and we've organized and activated the space. We're committed to having this garden stay a garden now and hopefully for the future. We've been trying with NGT for the last 3 years to move our garden into their portfolio. We were part of the 3 gardens that were part of the March 31st deadline to kind of sign the 30-year mortgage or not. And I just wanted to let you know that in spite of our waiting to come into a portfolio to have some protection to be a garden, our gardeners have raised funds to take care of a very much needed tree pruning project in our garden space that has been neglected for many, many years. This benefits the gardens as well as our neighbors. And so we really see that our intention is for the long term, and that we feel that this space is of great value to our community. I just hope that we are able to reach better definitions of how land gets transferred into gardens, and that you take the garden community input seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I appreciate all the comment that we've had, and I think we understand the issues, but I want to open it up for any comments from the board as well. It seems to me that what we got to figure out here is there a way for us to meet? And I just want to clarify, right, that the land bank policies are legislated so that none of the boards have the ability to just wipe the policies out because they've been legislated. And then we have the mayor's letter, obviously. So I think we've got to figure out, is there a way to sort of meet those objectives, but not necessarily bind the hands of gardeners so that they're not able to make the improvements that they need to make to make sure that these gardens are the best they can be. And I do think there's already been some conversation about the language around, weeds and debris and all of that, because I think we all agree that was way too nebulous. But I'm going to recognize Maria, and then I saw Alex with his hand up as well. So go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is related to this confirmatory deed. Would that accomplish the same goal as making sure that there is no nefarious transfer of the land during this restricted covenant period?
Is that directed towards us?
Staff, yes.
We couldn't speak to that without reviewing it, and we would have to actually review it in conjunction with city law and with PRA. Because again, it's about the title transfer and who's on title to make sure. So we would have to review that. I can't speak to it. I know we looked at easements, but not conformatory deeds.
Yeah, easements is a little different because, you know, it's just different, but I think that if the purpose was to make sure that there was, you know, confirmation within that there's no illegal transfer of the land, you know, during the, you know, reverted period, then that can be an option. I would just like to hear more about that, you know, possibly in other meetings.
Alex, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I didn't want to go without being recognized. Thank you so much. I want to echo Maria's comments and just say that I really appreciate, I read all of the letters and I appreciate the thought that went into it, that garden advocates took the time for a very long meeting to have their voices heard. I have been a member of a community garden. I know that it is not an easy feat to organize and manage a community garden. And I think there are other members of this board who have participated in community gardens. So thank you again. And I certainly recognize the downstream effects for nonprofits that this causes. And I'm hopeful we'll find and identify a solution. Thank you, Chair.
Andrew, sorry.
No problem at all. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have a couple questions / comments. I'll break it up also though, so I'm not taking too much time. I mean, I heard a lot more details and specifics this month relative to previous months about some of the financial impacts that this has on, you know, on our nonprofit partners and collaborators in the community garden space. And I think it's really important that we truly kind of think of them and acknowledge them as such, because they are helping to advance a kind of key tenet of land bank strategic plans from years prior, right? While the land bank is not, you know, beholden to dispose of all parcels or anything like that, community garden and open spaces are a kind of strategic, community-minded reuse and redevelopment, and that is, you know, at the end of the day, our goal is to be kind of achieving those goals and functions, and to particularly have letters, you know, written testimony from two separate funders saying that this messes up their ability to fund community garden nonprofits was, you know, particularly resonated with me. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and then also ask two more specific questions that I'm not sure have been brought up yet. It feels like this is designed to address a problem that has not necessarily surfaced yet. I know that this has happened with development dispositions, but I'm not sure if this has happened with open space dispositions. I mean, it's, you know, the change in affordability levels from a development RFP or a change in unit count, like that's harder to see from the naked
It's really,
eye.
I just want, it was because of side yards being sold. Side yards being disposed of for side yards and then being sold for development purposes at very high resale prices.
Okay. So there is, so the precedent is from side and rear yards, not community gardens and open space. And this tool was developed to address that, as opposed to it coming from, like, is this a practice? Is this a common land bank practice of other land banks around the country? I don't know, but I ask those questions because I wasn't familiar of any kind of garden on nonprofits going rogue prior to the mortgage being implemented. So just wanted to put that out there, and I'll, you know, leave it there for now and come back around if we have more time.
Yeah. Rebecca?
I mean, it is my understanding that has happened, that like nonprofits have gone defunct and then tried to sell property or try to flip property that they've been sitting on. And so like, I don't think it's like outside the realm of possibility that a nonprofit goes defunct, or even a community garden that's just volunteer led, I think is also always very precarious. I think, you know, to the points made before, it doesn't seem like there has to be an either or, but it definitely feels like what's the solution to protect the to protect the interests of the city and the property and maintain it for a particular use that we've agreed on, and you know, and meet the goals of the organizations. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, Andrew, do you want to make another comment?
I guess I'm still not aware. I know that there are nonprofits that have strayed from their agreements in the past. I'm just not sure of any nonprofits that have strayed from their community garden and open space agreements without first coming back to the city. And that's the specific part I wanted to ask.
I'm sorry. I don't understand the actual fiscal mechanics of this. The issue is that if we put a mortgage on the property, then an organization can't leverage the property for further financing. Is that correct? But they don't pay us money on this mortgage.
Right, but it's still seen as an encumbrance on the value, right? So I'll just say I don't know exactly how the state money works, but I do think there's probably some way to get at this, right? And I don't think we're going to figure it out today. So what I would recommend, and I know there's been conversations, but it sounds like we sort of have to have some additional conversations behind the scenes that should include the gardeners and various agencies involved in this, right? Because there's public property, there's redevelopment authority, there's us.
But I think it would also
to see if there's a way to get at how do we provide the assurance that we are required to provide, given the executive order, yet somehow allow the gardeners to access what they need to access through these other grant funds or whatever it is in order to make the improvements that they would like to make. And it seems like and it sounds like one of the things that needs to be further explored is this, and I'm probably not going to say it right, but this confirmatory deed, to see if that is potentially a tool.
I think the other thing that would be helpful would be to clarify, I think one of the concerns that we heard a lot was that you could shut me down if I have aesthetically, this garden doesn't meet what you think it should meet. And I think that, if we clarify that is absolutely not the intent of a 30-year mortgage and nobody's doing checks in that way.
And again, I just want to state that at the beginning, one of the things that Angel said has been worked through and agreed upon is very consistent language that's not as nebulous, so that it's not, wildflowers are mistaken for weeds, or there's short dumping that then gets resolved, and that everybody acknowledged that was a problem and that language was too loose. And so I think that's something that has already yes, that's already agreed that's going to be completely fixed. I think the larger issue is mortgage. The question is mortgage or not to mortgage. That is the question, right? And I think what we're trying to say is, I think we all understand that where we want to get to is we don't want restrictions on the gardens that prevent them from being gardens and being the best gardens they can be, right? We all want that. That's a common goal. We have the mayor's executive order and the disposition policies that we are required to meet, and those have been in conflict. However, I think there is a commitment to try to figure out what is the mechanism that would meet the legislated and mayor executive order requirements, but still provide the flexibility that the gardeners meet. And it sounds like potentially a confirmatory deed may be one way, or maybe there's some sort of different type of mortgage or some sort of something that isn't necessarily a mortgage that's at the value of highest and best use. I do think there's probably some wiggle room here, but it sounds to me like we've got to look into some of this stuff a little bit further. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just want to kind of get to the executive order piece because it's important and that was new information this month. So I want to say it back just to make sure I'm getting it correct with the function of Mayor Kenny's letter. So that letter is a directive from the chief executive of the city of Philadelphia. It guides the relevant departments under his purview. It does not change disposition policy in the code, nor does it usurp or override the relevant board of directors' ability to make a separate and independent decision. But of course, we have to live with the impacts of how they work together or don't. Is that accurate?
Well, I just want to say, I think our law department would shut that down. I think that, you know, the land bank does not operate outside of city government, right? It's a function of, and what, right? And as I think Angel pointed out at the beginning, most, if not all, of the properties in the land bank have either come to us through City of Philadelphia surplus properties or the redevelopment authority. And I think the law department would not say because they're in the land bank, you don't have to comply with the mayor's executive order. I just, to me, I don't think it's, I think we've got to figure out what is a mechanism that works sort of on all fronts. And I think we can get there. I think we can get there.
So just one clarifying point though, like a couple resolutions ago, we voted on a resolution that only affected properties going through the land bank board and not others. So how would this
Well,
be
and we did not, but we did not have a mayor's executive order, right?
Okay.
And that was also on top of that. Like, I just think that's apples to oranges to some extent. And I understand, right? Because there are certain things where we could, and that was like, but that also was a more restrictive, not a less restrictive.
Right.
Right. And we all know how that works. So in a lot of our different things is we can always go more restrictive. We just can't go less. But again, I mean, I know, I think we all want to get to the same outcome. And so I would say, let's allow staff and the different agencies and the gardeners to investigate this confirmatory deed or figure out it sounds to me like through discussions, there's already been some progress made. I think we've got to let that continue and get to the point where we are here saying, okay, this is what we're going to do going forward. Because just saying the 30-year mortgage at this level is not working. All right. So I think we don't have like a official motion or anything like that, but I do think let's try to get to the point. And if it's helpful that if I sit in these meetings or however it needs to be done, let me know. I apologize in advance for my schedule. But if they can happen without me, that's great. But I think, you know, let's really dig into this and see if we can come forward with something that is going to be workable. And because, yeah, we all want these gardens to exist and to exist in a way that is the most beneficial to the gardeners and the communities and all of that. And we certainly don't want to have something that hinders their ability to have water on them or the other improvements. And we want them to be protected. I think we all agree on all these outcomes. So we've just got to figure out how to get there. So I think that's the charge to the staff, and let's definitely include gardeners and their representatives in the conversation. And again, I'm happy to participate if that would be helpful, but I don't want it to be delayed because of my scheduling non-availability oftentimes. All right. Well, that concludes our agenda, if you can believe it. And so I just want to thank everybody for hanging in there with us. We knew this was going to be a long one, but there were a lot of important issues and things that we really needed to discuss. So I want to thank the communities for hanging in there throughout this meeting. We've been here together for quite some time, but you hung in there and took time out of your days and your busy schedules, and we really appreciate that. And I want to thank the board for really hanging in, and the staff as well, because these are important issues and it takes time. And this was quite the agenda. So with that, I'm going to have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned and we will see you back here in May. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.